26th regular board meeting. I'd like to remind everyone to please mute your phones and refrain from typing comments in Teams. This meeting is now called to order. In closed session, the board gave direction to legal counsel. And I would like to do roll call now to make sure we are all here. Student Rep. Carranza?
Present.
I see you. Thank you. Trustee Brown? Trustee Brown on with us? Trustee Irvin?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Maestas?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Marks?
I'm here. Thank you.
Trustee Mejia?
Present.
Thank you. Vice President Lopez?
Present.
Thank you. And I'm here. I'm going to circle back down to Trustee Brown. Not yet. Okay, he might have a little bit of a hard time getting on. We're going to go ahead and start with the beginning. For translator services, I would like to refer anybody who needs translator services to Ms. Paula Valbuena, who is on virtual conference with us. Ms. Valbuena, please go ahead.
Thank you, President West. Buenas noches. Habla Paula Valbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1-805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 121040-634 más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente llame al número de teléfono 1-805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 121040-634 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com, dirigiéndose a la parte inferior en la pantalla en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valbuena. So please stand with me for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. You may be seated. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district website, and the recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City Schools board meetings are closed to the public to follow the state guidelines on social distancing until further notice. This action was taken in response to the Governor's Executive Order N2520 and Resolution 1920-17, delegating authority to take necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, adopted by the Modesto City Schools on March 18, 2020. Regarding public comment, Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for public to provide comment. It is outlined in the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail or send us a comment via email address. This practice will continue throughout the time we are conducting virtual meetings. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. So we are pleased tonight to welcome a student from Shackelford Elementary School to lead us in the flag salute. Sixth grader Dominic Rambila is an outstanding scholar.
Yay!
I see his face. He has received perfect attendance and Student of the Month awards. Dominic is the Associated Student Body Video Coordinator and a member of Traffic Safety Patrol. He enjoys playing football and video games. Dominic wants to see changes in school and within his community, and he takes action to help those around him. When he graduates from college, Dominic would like to be an immigration lawyer helping families in need. That's awesome, Dominic. So we're going to have you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. IT staff, would you please start the video? And everyone, please stand.
Hello, my name is Dominic Brambilla, and I'm a 6th grade, and I am the ASB video coordinator.
Are we having trouble with the video? I think I will go ahead and say the pledge, and if we can't get the video to work, then we'll have Dominic go next board meeting. So please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I was sorry not to hear Dominic. Hopefully next time. We're going to move on to our agenda items, and this is A5. This is our welcome announcement by Superintendent Noguchi.
Thank you. Good evening, board, cabinet, and everyone that has tuned in this evening to the Modesto City School Board meeting. I hope everyone is well. I want to take just a few minutes to comment on the events at our nation's capital last week, or actually the week before on the 6th, January 6th. I believe it is important because it directly affected me and certainly many of those that have seen it, endless loops on the TV and social media. So I think it's important just to be able to express some of my reflections. First, when I witnessed what had happened at the nation's capital on January 6th, I initially was absolutely sickened by what I saw. Personally, I can take a lot. You guys have seen me take a lot and still move forward. And yet, for some reason, this really just kind of stopped me in my tracks. After watching the blow-by-blow mob attacks day after day as it unfolded on the media, I became more concerned and outwardly disgusted at what happened. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to share that tonight. And I know many people felt the same way. As my role as superintendent, I am focused on advancing equity and unity for our students, for our staff, and for our community as a whole. I really take great care at not advancing a particular side, a political view, because I think as a role of a superintendent, I need to be open to serve for all members of this community. In the spirit of unity, which is really where I see my role, I want to say a few words. What is going on in the country right now, it has to stop. We need to learn to live together. We need to learn to work together. We need to learn to make our communities the best that it can be for everyone in this room and for our students as a whole and for our community. If we can't figure out a way to work together and to resolve our differences, not only is our community going to falter, but our country is going to falter. And I don't want to see that happen here in Modesto City Schools. We are so blessed to live in a phenomenal country. We have our issues. We have lots of issues in our country, but we're not a developing country. We must find ways to understand the conflicts between each other, to figure out ways to better understand each other. If we don't, we're going to continue this conflict year after day, year after year. Right now, and this is something that keeps me up at night, our kids are watching what we're doing. Our kids are watching how we are reacting in our homes, how we are reacting in our schools, in our classrooms, and it's important that we teach students how to best respond to conflict and how best to work together for a common good, even if we don't agree with each other. We cannot agree with each other, but we still need to work together for our community. So really, in closing, I believe at the center of this is relationships. I had learned from the first year of student teaching, it is all about relationships. When I went into learning about administration, it's all about relationships. all of this is about relationships, right? The ability to develop relationships with ourselves and recognizing what we need to do for our community. And that's really what Wendy Bird spoke about this weekend, is what are we doing to be the difference, but also with each other. So I ask for all of us to have a commitment just to find the common ground, to seek understanding between the differing views, and to really build a community where everybody thrives, especially our children and certainly our adults. So with that, I'll close. Be well, take care of yourself, take care of others, your neighbors, and I'm going to turn it over to President West. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Noguchi. I think it's good to have that reminder that we're all responsible to help out. So I appreciate that. We're going to move on now to board member reports. Even though there's not maybe a lot going on right now, we just had the holidays, some of us may have participated in something. So Trustee Marks, would you like to share? Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Yes, I had the opportunity to participate in the Clergy Council just a week ago, and appreciated Krista Noonan was able to come in place of Dr. Noguchi that day, and I was very pleased with all that was shared with the Clergy Council about what Modesto City Schools is doing during COVID and during the break, and the students that were able to take classes and catch up on some missed assignments or improve their grades over the Christmas or the winter break. And so I was really pleased with the sharing that went on there, and just it's a great opportunity for us to be able to partner with the Clergy Council in sharing what's happening in Modesto City Schools and just how we can all work together. And so I appreciate the fact that Pastor Crosby is the chair, or he chaired the meeting, because Pastor of Second Baptist Church was unavailable to be able to. He had some health issues, but it's just great. So that's all I have to report. Anyway, that's all I have to report. Next time I'll have Cal SSD, but that's all today. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Irvin?
No report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mejia?
I don't have a report at this time.
Thank you. Vice President Lopez?
No report.
Thank you. Trustee Maestas?
No report.
Thank you. Trustee Brown?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. I have just a couple of things. I was able to attend before Christmas the audit exit meeting. And then also we had, actually all of us attended a special board workshop in January, and this was to look at the protocols and the norms and kind of help welcome our new board members and kind of get us all up to speed so we can work together as an effective governance team. So I appreciate that, the time that we were able to do that. I'd like to move on now to A7, which is our recognition. And it looks like we have 3 different recognitions today. Ms. Noonan?
Yes, thank you so much, President West. Let me get the PowerPoint shared, and you should be able to see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Great, excellent. All right, so thank you so much for having me tonight so that we can do our recognitions. These are always really important, and as I always mention in every board meeting, I really appreciate the board's diligence in sticking to these recognitions, because they really do make a powerful difference, especially after the board meeting. I'm not sure if you know this, but we do share the individuals who have been recognized. We share on social media, so there's even additional recognition that happens. So we love sharing the good news, and I think right now more than ever, everyone loves good news and just hearing something positive. So first up, we're going to recognize a student with outstanding character through our Character Education Recognition Program. Tonight, we are celebrating Thomas Downey High School 10th grader Nicholas Rubio for the character trait of responsibility. His teacher, Beth Blickenstaff, nominated Nicholas and shared, "Nicholas is organized, conscientious, and determined." While being counseled recently by Mrs. Blickenstaff's Mrs. Bickenstaff, regarding a choice he needed to make for the spring semester. He explained he would need to consider what was best for his family first. She was struck by his uncommon teenage character as he described his concerns. Nicholas honors decisions and commitments with forethought and integrity and should be commended. So congratulations to Nicholas. That's great. And there he is with his family. Very cute. All right, next up, we're going to celebrate our MCS Heroes, which are internal staff for the district. So tonight we are recognizing Angela Zioli and Rosemary Willett, from our purchasing department, and Karen Lewis from our warehouse department. Nominated by school nurse Aurora Licadini, who shared, in June, when personal protective equipment was difficult to obtain, Angela, Rosemary, and Karen worked closely and quickly with health services to purchase needed equipment for our school community. Because of these three professional and outstanding employees, our staff and students have essential personal protective equipment to keep our school community safe. The district could not have accomplished this task without their help. They are experts in their area and showed tremendous teamwork. All three should be commended for their dedication and hard work. And lastly, one of our MCS heroes, who I showed on the first slide, Angela Zioli, she just celebrated her birthday over the weekend. So happy birthday, Angela. All right, so congratulations to our MCS heroes. Next up, our special recognition tonight recognizes and celebrates the team that created the Hybrid Hub video series. And you may have recalled seeing some of those videos during our Welcome Back to School, and when we were welcoming students to in-person instruction in November, we showcased a lot of the videos that were produced. Senior Directors Kim Newton and Mike Rich teamed up with Instructional Technology Director Matthew Ketchum, and these are their pictures. I tried to do it circular, so Kim is in the upper left, and then we have Matthew with his wife and their beautiful dog, and then Mike Rich and his lovely family are in the bottom picture. In partnership with instructional technology trainers Angela Gama, Alexandra Hancock, and digital curriculum coordinator Susan Church, they all worked together to create, and I'm also going to show teachers Letta Ka, Ashley Stevens, and Barbara Rios created the video series to support TK through 6 teachers in the transition to synchronous learning. This collaborative effort involved creating videos that showed scaled models of synchronous instruction using fun, engaging examples that appealed to all technology comfort levels. The videos help prepare teachers, students, and families for the return to in-person instruction for the pre-K through 6th grade schools. And this is really important too, I think, to highlight especially the teachers who worked with us, because this was a great effort to meet teachers where they are and to help them feel comfortable with the different technology platforms, but also to help the students feel comfortable and the families. So I think the teachers especially provided a really great insight into that and what would work best not only for their work style, but also for the students' work style. So on behalf of the Board of Education and the Superintendent, we want to thank all of you for your leadership and commitment to our students, teachers, and families. So congratulations to all of our recognees for tonight. And that completes the recognitions, so let me know if you have any questions.
I am waiting. I see no hands raised. Ms. Noonan, I want to thank you for always doing this. This was always my favorite part of the board meeting, is seeing these recognitions at the beginning of the board meeting. I miss seeing everyone in person. Hopefully soon we'll be able to do that again, but we certainly do have a lot of heroes in this district, so thank you for always sharing that.
Oh yes, my pleasure. Thank you for the time.
We're going to move on to A8 now, which is the approval of the consent agenda. And Ms. Noonan, we're going to start back to you to see if we have any comments from the public on this.
No, there were no comments on the consent agenda.
Awesome. And then Trustee Marks, I understand that you would like to pull D2 from the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. And so we're going to go ahead and pull that. and we will vote on the consent agenda minus D2. And where would you like to discuss that? Do you want to just right after we approve this? Do you want to discuss it at that time, or is there a different place?
Sure. I don't think it'll be a long discussion. I just was planning to vote no, so that's all.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So minus D2, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Trustee Mejia. And do I hear a second? Trustee Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 I can see all of you. All opposed? Nay? No opposed, so the motion carries unanimously. So item D2, Trustee Marks, do you want to a little bit discuss what that is and why you'd like that pulled?
Okay, the item is it's the honors biology, the living earth. It's a change in the it's on because it's being changed, and so the reason I was voting no was on Unit 3 there's evidence of evolution as the title of it, and I have held that evolution is a theory. And when I was first on the board, we were doing our syllabus, and I asked to have that that added to it, that it would be a theory, and the board approved that. So this seemed to be contrary to that. So I'm voting no if it's not taught as a theory.
All right, thank you.
Unless you can affirm that it's being taught as a theory, I'll go with it.
I have no information on that. Do we have any?
I was in H, part of it was the high school ESS 3, is it 4-1, so that's where I was voting no.
Okay,
So.
Thank you. So, yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot to raise my hand.
That's okay.
I don't know exactly if it's in the process, but in the particular unit that you have, it does say continue discussing the theory of evolution, focusing on Darwin's observations, including how adaptations and natural selection are used for evidence. So, I mean, it's in that unit. I don't know if that.
I see that. You are correct. Thank you. I was going down to item HSLS 4-1, where I was on biological evolution, which I believe in microbiology evolution. I just didn't believe in macro evolution. So thank you for pointing that out to me, Mr. Maestros.
Thank you,
I appreciate that. I don't know how I missed it. I went right down on through the whole thing and read through everything except I missed that line in there.
Sometimes those new eyes can really help us, can't they?
So I will withdraw my no vote and I will support the item D2.
Teacher's eyes.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Maestros.
So do we, I'm unsure of this process, do we need to go back and vote the original?
Just on D2.
No, we can just vote on D2 separate. It'll be fine.
So on D2, do I hear a motion to approve?
I would make the motion to approve it.
Trustee Marks.
I second.
By Trustee Maestas. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you for that side.
And thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it. It helped a lot.
All right, thank you. So we're moving on now to A9, which is the approval of the order of discussion items. So do I hear a motion to approve the order of the discussion items?
So moved.
Trustee Brown, seconded by Trustee Marks. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So moving on to A10, this is the period for public presentation. Ms. Noonan, are there any general comments from the public?
Yes, there is one comment, and I will read that now. The comment is from Mr. John Walker, and John is a parent and former board trustee as well as a substitute teacher, and his comment is regarding the health and safety of school sites. The comment goes as follows. Good evening, trustees and superintendent. Thank you and all the other districts for the work accomplished to ensure in-person instruction is safe for all. I believe schools are the safest and most controlled environment in the public sphere. This is not a topic unique to MCS. I have worked in districts all over Stanislaus County, and the protocols may be slightly different, but they all put in tremendous effort to keep students, teachers, and staff safe. Distancing, masks, plexiglass, and hand sanitizer. I have played short safety videos followed by Q&A. Students, do any of these symptoms apply to you? I worked in one school with temperature checks at multiple points when entering and exiting classrooms. School sites are clean, hatches are battened down, and that is not the case with retail, dining, or other public activity for that matter. I drove by HSA on Scenic last week, and multiple hundreds of people lined up for a vaccination. Little or no social distancing for hours on end, and likely those at, in quotes, high risk. These are the folks setting the rules, which is concerning. In closing, what I am asking all governance teams to do is keep our schools open and hold the line with the screamers and make sure every decision starts and ends with students. If you are talking about adults and politics, you are off target. And that's the end of the comment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving on now to our discussion and action items. So I'd like to start with our student representative report. Carson Carranza.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you all had a great holiday season. First off, I wanted to thank all the teachers and administrators who came to campus the third week of winter break to help support the students and get them back on track. I really appreciate you all for going above and beyond and trying to make the school year as normal as possible and help students rebound from grades that may not have been the best first semester. I think that was very important, and I'm glad it got done. At the end of our last semester, the Inter-High Council and I wrapped up our district-wide book drive. The 7 participating high schools received over 24 boxes of books to donate to our local community. The children's books will be donated to Reach Out and Read as soon as they are back open, and books for older students will be donated to the Salvation Army. During the next 2 weeks, we'll be counting the books and officially announce the winner of the book drive contest. At the last board meeting, I mentioned a modified grading policy that many other California districts have adopted. Last semester proved to be very difficult for students, as seen from the number of failing grades. Numerous students within our district do not have optimal learning conditions and lack the resources and motivation present in a normal school year. The modified grading policy calls for teachers to give a 50% for missing assignments instead of a 0. Students and administrators from CSBA and CSBMA advocate on behalf of this grading policy to promote equitable learning during COVID closures. Right now, a large majority of a student's grade is based on assessments that are more behavioral, such as participation and homework. Students are subjected to relatively similar assessments to a regular school year, but with an unmodified grading policy. Temporarily adjusting grading procedures for one semester might be uncomfortable for some teachers, but right now it's crucial for students, especially our seniors, that they remain on track to graduate and can demonstrate their knowledge online. According to an article from a teacher's blog, many educators don't favor this type of grading because it feels unnatural to give half credit for no work, and teachers don't want to incentivize unsatisfactory work. However, students are tired of online learning, even though it is the safest option for them. The grading procedures will the modified grading procedure would give a student 50% instead of a 0, which is still an F, a non-passing grade. But the main difference is that a student is going to give up if they have a grade near 0 in a class, because it's often mathematically impossible for them to rebound from that grade and achieve a passing grade. The modified grading procedure will enable students to make the choice to fix their grade and pass the class. Students will have the motivation to pass their classes, even after neglecting to complete their assignments for a period of time. Another benefit of this modified grading policy is getting MCS seniors to graduate on time and ensure other students do not fall far behind. It is difficult to learn outside of school because the learning environment has changed so drastically. So it is important that we consider changing the grading policy as well. Please consider adopting this modified grading procedure for the remainder of the 2020 to 2021 school year. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Trustee Marks? You're mute.
Carson, great report. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in all that you put together. I wanted to know, did you attend a conference or where did you hear about this?
So I first heard about it at the CSBA Student Board Member Conference, and it's been talked a lot about in the CSBMA Association as well for the student board members. I know, for example, the district Madera Unified, my friend from down there has been talking to me about this modified grading procedure, and a lot of other districts have talked about it as well at the big conference that we went to in December, and I thought it would really help students for the remainder of the school year.
Yeah, some of us attended one at the conference too, so that's why I was wondering where you heard about it. And
You're muted again, Trustee Marks.
Thank you. Just wanted to say I appreciate that you. I didn't know where you heard about it. I thought that you. Because many of us heard about it at a conference as well. But I appreciate the fact that you're also going around, not going around, but meeting other students from around the state and having discussions together about what's best for students, because that's where we learn from one another, is when you bring that voice into the board meetings like this. So thank you for doing that research and for looking into that and bringing it to us too.
Thank you.
I really value hearing the student input, and I'm so happy that we have a student representative on our board, and someone especially who's so interested in current events and passionate about helping our students. Thank you. We're going to next move on to B2, which is our mid-year review. And Dr. Noguchi, that's you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And again, good evening. I am very excited to reflect back to the work that's been done thus far on my goals as a mid-year. For the two new board members, this is the process that we use each year in May as part of the evaluation cycle. The board develops goals specifically to the superintendent. We also have district goals, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. And also part of that process is that we report on the progress of those goals. Now, most of our board presentations are 10 to 15 minute max is what I hopefully coach all of cabinet and others on. Tonight's presentation is going to be a little longer. In fact, it's going to be about 45 minutes. That doesn't account for questions as well. But it's 45 minutes because I really want to bring us all together to understand the foundation for the work that we're doing moving forward. And you can't do that in 15 minutes because it really is, it's the foundation from which we are building our goals. Part of my goals and the district strategic goals that I'll show you in just a minute really are the glue that holds the internal and external accountability for everyone in the district office and our site leadership. So it goes from the top, and then it funnels down to an accountability system for administrators called they're called academic or leadership summits. And at these leadership summits, we have groups of 4 leaders. There's 4 of them, and they report out on their goals 4 times a year. And they hold each other accountable for their goals. And all of those goals feed into what you'll see as far as our district goals. So with that, Mr. Godot, can you put up my presentation, please? Let's first start with that. Awesome. So we're going to go to the next slide. Our vision. So as we start, work with our goals, all the goals, both the district goals and my goals, lead us to the realization of both our vision and our mission. So our vision is that every student graduates with the skills and knowledge and character traits essential to thrive and contribute to society. We're reminded as a board, we updated this vision 2 years ago. Certainly we can continue to update this, but for the new board members, we did update this vision and also the mission on the next slide 2 years ago. A vision, you can go to the next slide. The vision is where we are going. The mission is how we are going. So one is the what and the other one is the how. Our mission is divided onto 2 slides because there's a total of 5 bullets here. So let me read the mission to you. Our mission is to provide rigorous, relevant, and diverse educational programs that engage and motivate all students to reach their individual potential. So that this mission is the how we are going to achieve the vision. So how are we going to go about doing this? First, we're going to go back to the last slide. So first, there's a total of 5 bullets. The first one is we're going to first provide a safe, welcoming learning environment. So welcoming schools, customer service, ensuring that our parents and our students have what they need. We also are going to ensure that students have access to high quality instructional and learning conditions. For this year, it looks a little different, right? I mean, we're in a COVID environment. So we've ensured that we have computers, that we have internet access, that we have training, that we have supports through the help desk to be able to access. And then the third is to create a culture of high expectations. So certainly at the district office, we've raised the level of expectation for ourselves and also for those that we work to supervise. The next slide. Additionally, we need to work to support our staff through data decision making. So you'll see later on in the presentation our data dashboard. So to achieve our mission, we need to bring about data decision making and also to have trusting, open, honest, and ongoing communication with everyone. And that's really what I spoke about in my opening statement today. You know, really working at transparent relationships and working together in service of our mission, which is to provide the rigorous, relevant educational program to ensure that our kids are successful. The next slide. Now, I have 5 goals that then work to support our strategic goals. Our strategic goals are really the foundation for the district, insofar as our strategic goals are aligned to our LCAP, which means our strategic goals are aligned to the budget process, which you all are directly you directly participate in. Also, the LCAP is the opportunity for our stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, community members to be able to give input. All of these align to our strategic goals. Now, there's 2 slides for the strategic goals. Each of the goals have bullets underneath, but I'm not going to go over those tonight. The purpose for this is just to call out what our 5 goals are, and then I'm going to go into my 5 goals. Really, the point being is showing that there is a very structured, methodical purpose for our goals, all in service of our vision and mission. So our first goal, and this one's a big one, is increase academic achievement and ensure equitable access to enable all students to become college and career ready. I think every district in the state of California and the nation has this goal. This is our academic achievement goal. Our second is to ensure all employees have access to high quality professional development. We know, especially this last year, we really need to invest in support for our teachers and staff. Right now for distance learning. Next year it will be for other strategies that we have, but we know that we have to have high quality professional development. Goal 3 is to ensure that we provide a safe, welcoming, and respectful environment for every member of our community. Here is very important. When I came on to the district, and also I heard from key communicators and also the community meetings, is that our schools were not welcoming. And so we put a lot of energy, time, and expectations around ensuring that our schools are community hubs and a place where people feel welcome and that they feel that they can go in and get information and provide feedback. The next slide. The last 2 goals in our strategic goal is goal 4. We have to remain fiscally and operationally sound. That one's always going to be there, right? This one has been carried on throughout the years. And goal 5, recruit, hire, train, and retain high quality staff. So it's easy to hire somebody. And then if they're not successful, if they don't feel supported, they then just go somewhere else where they're going to be successful. We've spent a lot of energy with human resources and professional development to ensure everybody has the support they need to be successful, not only in this distance learning environment, but in Modesto City as a whole. So the next slide. So the superintendent's goals. So I'm going to leave the strategic goals behind us, but you're going to hear the strategic goals in the superintendent's goals as well. So the superintendent's goals. We have to recognize that the superintendent's goals were developed by the board last May. Where were we last May? last April, we closed schools down. Last April, we were scurrying about, it was in March and April, we were scurrying about trying to get internet access and computers and really completely retool the way we deliver education. So the 5 goals that you're going to hear about right now, and then we're going to look at progress towards each of them, you have to put that hat on, where we were in May and where our focus was at that time. So the first goal, to ensure that we have an instructional model not only developed, like what is this going to look like? What is hybrid? What is synchronous? What are we going to do for kids? What does the model look like? How are we going to educate our kids? And once we decide that, how are we going to monitor it to make sure that it is successful or not successful? So it's holding, again, the accountability piece that you're going to hear throughout this presentation. Accountability, not so we can write it in someone's evaluation. That's not how I use the word accountability. For me, it's about identifying the support I need to make it better. So when you hear accountability, it's not, it's in that, it's really in that vein. So first, we need to develop structures, distance learning, hybrid, and online. We didn't really know where we were going to be at that point. We knew that we were going to need to develop teacher and staff and parent professional development. You'll hear that in just a bit. And then we also need to monitor how our kids are doing in English and in math. Goal number 2. Goal number 2 was to ensure that we had workshops that were developed for parents regarding this instructional model. So we developed tools for our parents. We developed YouTube videos and webinars. But equally as important is that accountability piece. How are we tracking participation? So let's say we have this great video, how to access online services, but there's only 10 or 15, 20, maybe 100 parents that connect to it. Is that really hitting the mark? And the answer would be no. So you had asked for how are we tracking participation, and then also, is it meeting the mark? Are we providing parents what they need to help them be successful with their students? So you'll see some information about this as we move forward. Goal 3. Goal 3 and 4. All of us were hyper-focused last year at this time on the social emotional supports for our students. So not only did we want to develop systems and strategies within our system, but we also wanted to ensure, one, did the kids know or the students know how to access it? What services were available? And also, were these services hitting the mark? Were they helping the students and helping parents as we move forward? You'll get some information on this. We have done a pre and a mid-year, and we'll do the post in March. So we have 2 right now, and we'll still have another one. We'll have another survey result at the end of the year as well. And then we continue on with being fiscally solvent. We know that last year at this time that there were real concerns with our budget. There still is concerns with the budget, but we're in a much different place than where we were, and I'll let Mr. Zerley talk about that in just a bit. The next slide. Goal 5. This one is a goal that started year 1. When I was being interviewed, I shared that I would be working on a data dashboard, so it wasn't technically a goal the first year. But the second year I was here, that's when we set goals, and in that we continue to work on our data dashboards. That first year we were here 2.5 years ago, data was really difficult to get because we had different systems. Now our systems are all aligned, and we've now created 3 data dashboards, and you'll see information about the data dashboards as we move forward today as well. We have some phenomenal work in this area to be able to help not only our administrators, but our teachers as well, and we still have work to do. Next slide. Okay, so here's where I'm going to invite some of the cabinet members to be able to help and support outlining the work. Not all cabinet is sharing information because not all cabinet are directly related to what you just heard in those first 5 goals. So they're still working as they work to support the strategic goals, but I haven't tapped them on the shoulder to be able to help and support this work. So going back to goal 1, this is the instructional model being developed and monitored. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Goodell. You were on mute.
I've got a delayed system over here. Apologies.
Okay,
good evening,
no problem.
Trustees. Before I outline the instructional models that we've developed and implemented to address the tremendous educational instructional challenges of this pandemic, I'd like to begin by acknowledging our amazing team. I'd like to highlight the professionals that we have in MCS, namely our labor partners in MTA and CSEA, as well as our MCS managers. The past 10 months has been a very heavy lift. The instructional models that we're currently implementing have been developed through considerable input from our stakeholders. So what you're seeing in these visuals here on this slide, it's been a process since March. That process has involved considerable input from our stakeholders, including parents, community, and our labor partners, through online forums as well as online surveys, through negotiations and deep conversations with our aforementioned labor partners, in addition to the parameters outlined by the state and public health. So as you know, we started the year in distance learning. All students were learning from home. In November, we began the process of providing TK6 parents and families the option of having their elementary students attend in-person instruction through our hybrid instructional model. You see students here attending in-person instruction in this hybrid model, and if you'll note the picture on the right, you will see the large screen TV with students. Those are students that are in the other cohort. So we've got students that attend, that can attend on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is a distance learning day. So all students are home learning at home. But on Monday and Tuesday, for example, these students have the option of coming in for in-person learning, or if their parents aren't comfortable with that, they can stay home. And that instruction happens concurrently, and you can see that from the pictures of the students on the TV. I got to tell you, there are many districts of our neighboring districts that would love to be in a position where they're implementing a model such as this. So we have a lot to be proud of in regards to our TK6 hybrid model. Now at 712, we are still in distance learning. We're still working on that reopening plan. We have, the board did approve, if you'll recall, I want to say back in November or December, the reopening plan for 712, and that requires us to be in the red tier for a minimum of 2 weeks, and then 7-8 would open to a different instructional model other than distance learning, with 9-12 2 weeks after that if we stay in red. What you're seeing here is our support of students in hubs. So we've got students at 712 that are attending for in-person learning opportunities in a hub model, which provides for up to 14 students in a classroom with 2 staff members. For the most part, the majority of our 712 students are, however, still receiving their daily instruction in the distance learning model. So with that, I am going to turn it over to myself. I forgot. Sorry, I got one more slide here. Part of the process of implementing these instructional models is monitoring, right? Monitoring students, ensuring that they're engaged. And one of the things that we've implemented in coordination with our technology department is our data dashboard. And the good news is we started our data dashboard way before COVID hit. So we really were in a good position to move this needle forward. So as we implemented our distance learning, we recognize that identifying which students are engaged and which students aren't was going to be critical to our work. So some of the key performance indicators that our site administrators and district managers have access to on a daily basis are, as you can see, these key performance indicators. The percentage of students that are engaging, logging into Schoology, the number of students that are active in technology or inactive, and when parents are logging in, which staff are logging in and utilizing different supports and resources. So we take this data on a daily basis and use it to identify, in particularly, students that aren't engaging. So on this data dashboard, you can click on inactive students. You can click on that and drill it down to site-specific, even group-specific by site of students that are not logging in and connecting with the work. So that is how we're using data to inform us and identify supports and strategies at the student level, which I think our board, to your credit, is very tuned into what does this mean to the 27,000+ students we have, but what does it mean to the one student, each student in every classroom? This is how we're using data to drill down deeply and identify those students that are not connecting. You'll also see from this next slide exactly what I was just speaking to, how we can use the data down to, you'll see the bar graphs on the right-hand side by school site. It gives us some trend data. Now, some of this trend data is relevant. Some of it's difficult because obviously with COVID and attendance and school closures and those things, some of the data does get a little bit difficult to compare. But you can see in the middle there, the middle bottom, attendance by English proficiency. We can identify, click on those bar graphs by school and drill down to identify what English learners are engaging each day on a specific day or through a week, which are not, and that's how we're providing our targeted supports, outreach to families. You know, what do we need to do to help students be successful in these challenging times? And so with that, I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Noguchi.
Thank you. Now, certainly we couldn't have built those dashboards if it wasn't for our technology department, so big shout out to technology department, but also the professional development department and research and evaluation insofar as providing the training to our administrators on how to access that. How do I use it? Because they now have access to a lot of data, and you're going to see later that's just one of the dashboards and we have a counselor dashboard which has a lot of information as well. So thank you to the team on that. The next piece, and this was the third bullet in my goal, number 1, and that is how are kids doing in English and math? I actually have data from a number of different, not just English and math, grades, graduation, and dropout rates, among other things that I'll be putting together for you. Part of it this Friday and then the following Friday. Grades were just finalized as of last Friday, and so we literally couldn't put it all together to be able to get it on the slide to you, but we will get that to you. What I can say, while we recognize we're doing some great work in this area, it's not where we want to be. We're in COVID, kids are home. We're doing our best to be able to get half of our kids, you know, in the classroom at the elementary. But we still have a long way to go, and we're continuing to work on day-to-day, drilling it down to the student to get them what they need. I think another piece that it is important to note, while yes, we worked with MTA on developing the hybrid schedule, which is synchronous, which is truly phenomenal in the work, we also have to recognize CSEA. If it wasn't for CSEA, we wouldn't have had any kids up to the point when we brought kids back. So CSEA truly has been a critical part to our success with our hubs, both elementary and high school. So a big shout out to them and the work that they do as we work to support our children. All right, the next slide, which is goal number 2. Goal number 2, I too am having a delay, so Mr. Godot, don't fret. There is some issues today. So goal number 2 is really a heavy hitter. In fact, there's 12 slides that go with this. I heard loud and clear, even before COVID, the need to connect with parents, to connect with the community. COVID hit. How are we going to help our community in multiple language access information for their kids? So what are the tools? And we didn't even know what the tools were. This was a brand new pandemic. We're retooling our educational system. What tools do we need? I don't know. What tools do we need, right? So we were learning as we were going. So I feel fortunate to have had this goal because there's some great work that has happened under, you know, really the direction of Krista Noonan, who supervises Mady Herrera, also technology and our instructional team. So with that, Chris is going to talk about the tools that were developed, also the tracking, participation, and pre and post survey. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Krista.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Noguchi. So it is my pleasure, like I said, to talk about the parent support resources that we've created, but also resources for students, because for many students, this can be a very overwhelming time as well. And for parents, we can only imagine how overwhelming it is. So we really want to provide as many tools and supports as we can. So one of those supports involves workshops that were developed, as well as webinars and YouTube videos that Dr. Noguchi mentioned. And this is really under Mady Herrera and her team in student, parent, and community support services. They partnered very extensively with technology services under Mr. Russ Selkin's team and Mr. Matthew Ketchum, who you may have recalled I mentioned earlier during our recognitions. So this was definitely a team effort, as well as the curriculum instruction and professional development program as well. So next slide. One of the first things that we did in July 2020, so as you may recall, the new school year started in August. So it was around mid to late July. We created robust help centers for both parents and students. And as you can see, these help centers, they really take you step by step in the tools that you're going to need in order to succeed with the distance learning environment and not physically being on campus. So we talk parents through how to set up how to access their student's PowerSchool account. PowerSchool is used for many things, such as seeing your students' grades. It's where the sites log attendance and so forth. Then we also have School Messenger, which for any of you who are parents, you definitely get those notifications that are sent via phone, via email, and via text in the family's preferred language, so primarily English and Spanish. Those messages are always distributed both of those ways. And then we have Schoology for both the students, that's how they access their classes and their course curriculum, but we also have Schoology access for parents so that they can also go in and access different messages, perhaps from their school or from their teacher, that apply to their particular students that they're looking at their Schoology account. So next slide, I'll go into a few of the website metrics. So for this particular, both the Parent Support Center as well as the Student Support Center, you can access those on the MCS4Kids.com homepage. It's a large graphic that's down on probably about midway down on the page. These are some of the metrics just between July and November. I didn't have December's data when this presentation was finalized, but just in that roughly 5 to 6 month period, we had close to 150,000 page views. Then we go down some of these other statistics. So new visitors, it means that 64% of the time it was someone new who was coming to the site. And then returning visitors, who obviously found it as a great resource, was roughly almost 36%. Then we also like to track, are they visiting from a mobile device or are they visiting from a desktop or their laptop? And as you can see, especially with a site that is as robust as those and the tools that are provided, they really are most friendly for desktops and laptops. However, if someone did access from a mobile device, the design is responsive, so it'll actually scale to the platform that someone is using. And then I also thought you would be interested in knowing how are they getting to this site. So we've used a variety of different promotion mechanisms in order to drive traffic to these sites, but a lot of people, a majority, are coming directly from the MCS4Kids.com website. And then the schools have also been great partners in making sure that their parent and student populations understand and know about these tools. So almost 38% came directly from the school sites. And then there are some who actually entered the URL address for the actual site. Sometimes what I'll do on social media, for example, I'll shorten the URL so that we can post it on social media and just take people directly to the site. And that's what that particular percentage is tracking. Next slide. Okay, so as Dr. Noguchi mentioned, we also developed YouTube videos. And As you know, if for any of you who use social media, videos are definitely one of the most effective ways to communicate your message, and it's much more personal than just reading a text or seeing a photo. So we really are trying to use video as much as possible. In this case, we developed through the team who we had mentioned earlier, through the Hybrid Hub videos, we developed a video called the Super Student video, and it was basically a day in the life of what needs to happen as a student who's in the pre-K through 6th grade, what needs to happen when you're coming back to school. And in this case, this is actually the little blonde gentleman, that's Mr. Mike Rich's son, and he was a very willing participant, and he demonstrated, okay, from the time I wake up, this is what I do. I take my temperature, then I go out and I get to school, I unpack my materials, I keep my mask on, and it basically just illustrated what a day in the life is going to look like in this new hybrid model that we have. So as you can see, I tracked on YouTube, there were a little over 1,500 views. And Facebook, the reach, that means how many people watched it, but also how many people perhaps shared it or interacted with that. So that's what reach means on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it was viewed 805 times. Next slide. Now this video, you can definitely see was a lot more popular. So this particular one goes over the protocols for riding the bus. And I do have to give credit Tim Zierli and Mr. Ryan Hahn, their team, Felicia, I can't recall her last name, but they did an amazing job producing this video. We had both Spanish and it was dubbed in English, but it also had Spanish subtitles so that we could reach our Spanish speaking population as well. And it was really geared towards both parents and student audiences. It talks to when the bus comes up, look for your route that is on the side of it. You're going to have your temperature taken before you access the bus. Here's where you can sit on the bus. You have to keep your mask on. And it just basically goes through the protocols step by step of what it's going to look like to take the bus. And I do have to point out the reason why the YouTube videos, the views is so low is because we didn't, I prefer when we have a video, I prefer to upload it directly to the social media platforms rather than redirecting to YouTube. So that's the only reason why the YouTube views count is so low, because I primarily used Facebook and Instagram to drive the video and to gain more popularity. It's all about the algorithms with the social media sites. So as you can see, both platforms, Facebook, it was viewed almost 6,000 times, and on Instagram, a little over 5,100 times it was viewed. So we definitely view that as a great success. And as I mentioned, the student, parent, and community support services, they've done a variety of webinars and workshops, and they are very astute to ensure that they're offering them in both English and Spanish in order to help train our parents. And Mady Herrera and her team, they are masterful with our online live Microsoft Teams live programs. They really do an exceptional job. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to go in exactly the statistics, but also some of the satisfaction from the parents. Next slide. So parents access these webinars through the parent support website that I mentioned earlier. And Mady Herrera and her team, they go through on a monthly basis, they'll outline their schedule of all the classes that they're having for that month. They do take into account any suggestions that are coming from parents. For example, sometimes we have parents who say, you know, it's really hard for me to make an evening class, so can you do something during the day? Or vice versa. Some parents may say, you know, I work during the day, but I'd really like to watch this. Can you offer it again at night? So Mady and her team have been wonderful at being flexible and to try to encompass everyone's needs. And these are all live events, so they're not, they haven't gotten to the point where they're recording them and just pushing the recording out, because we really want to be there for people to be able to answer their questions and to follow up. It's much more personal than just posting a recording. But we are planning on doing that eventually, just so that there's more of a library for people to access. So as you can see with the total parent engagement, just between late July is when they first started offering these webinars through December, they reached almost 7,700 parents. And you can see the breakdown here, quite a significant population of our Spanish speakers. Obviously that number could go higher, but I think it's a great start for how new this program is. You can see the engagement in English, and when it says both languages, it means that we had live translation, interpretation that was happening while the event was going on. So that's a little over 1,200. Next slide. So now I'm going to break it down. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but this is just giving you a sampling of some of the topics that they cover. And the numbers that are in parentheses, that's the total number of participants who have engaged in those webinars. As you can see where it says parent MCS apps, that's things like I mentioned Schoology or PowerSchool or Go School Messenger. That's what is encompassed under the MCS apps. One thing I want to credit Mady and her team with doing, they just launched, I believe it was in late October, they just launched some social media webinars where they're going through for parents saying, hey, here's what Instagram is, or here's what Facebook is, and here's how your student could be interacting with it. And it's really provided a great overview for parents, because sometimes they are not skilled in terms of what their kids or their students could be doing on these social media sites. So we're doing it from a lens of student protection and making sure that you're aware of what's actually going on those sites. And as you can see, there's been several biliteracy and ELAC and reclassification. There's also the EL master plan and the ILRC, that's the Immigration Resource Center, and we coordinated with them to have legal assistance to families who are looking to gain permanent status. And we also did several college and career fairs and pathway to college, as well as financial aid to help students reach their next level. Next slide. Now, the other thing in this virtual environment, it's so hard because this isn't the same as me presenting to you in the boardroom, or as President West mentioned, it's not the same seeing the recognitions, but at least we can still do it. And I really do want to give kudos to all of the team who have worked on this, because they've made the best out of something to still engage people. So one area, so backpacks, for example, even though children are, at this point when we did this event, even though they weren't physically coming back to school, we still want to give children who need it that experience of, here's your backpack, and hey, it's loaded with school supplies. And Mady and her team coordinated and were able to donate, or they received donations of almost 1,200 backpacks. And they were able to distribute those to close to 400 families who couldn't afford to go out and purchase them on their own. They also work with the Parents Leading Change on the community forum that took place, I believe that was back in September, and they had 150 participants on that particular live event. We did also partner with the NAACP on a suicide prevention forum. It's only been one that's taken place so far, but we had 32 participants, and I know you'll be hearing from Mr. Herbst about the importance of social emotional support, so that's just one area that we're doing that. They also did, as I mentioned, the bagged school supplies, and then they helped sites and donors who wanted to supply holiday meals for families for both Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday. And Christmas holiday also involved toy donations from the Sylvan Improvement Club. So they were able to help a total between both holidays, 74 families had a warm dinner on their table because of their outreach. Next slide. So one thing that we also do is, in terms of the metrics, we ensure that we track the participation of how are parents hearing about the class or the presentation. As you can see, the gold color is the phone dialer. So that means School Messenger. That means that we've sent out the messaging and then they log in after they get that reminder. And I won't go through each one, but actually, if you look on the left, the text and the email, all of those go along with the phone dialer, because that's the one encompasses school messenger. And as you can see, social media was about a 4%. And then the student, parent, and community support services team also mails flyers to homes as well. So that was 13%. Next slide. Now, here's the surveys. Now, I do want to say there may be questions because the numbers at the bottom do not come close to equaling the amount of parents that we've reached. But it's because not everyone who attends these trainings, either A, they don't complete a survey, or B, they may not complete the survey completely. So I just want to let you know that. So we had 903 surveys that were received, and as you can see, there's a overwhelming almost 91% are indicating that the presentation did indeed increase their knowledge and awareness of the topic. And then we also made sure that we captured the grade levels of the students that the parents were representing. And as you can see, it's highly skewed to elementary, but I do like that junior high and high school parents are also getting engaged. Next slide. Now, this is my last slide. I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but the reason why I wanted to show this to you is because the student, parent, and community support services team, they are very attentive to, as I mentioned, meeting parent needs. So in every single workshop, they will always ask, is there anything else that we can help you with? What else do you need support on? And what needs do you have? So as you can see, some of the topics are English learner student support. That's the top one. And then it actually says some of the details of what the parents are asking for. And then social, emotional, and behavioral support, college and career, and then what additional student supports, for example, how can parents motivate their students? How can they increase their student participation? Those are just the top four, and you can feel free to read through the rest of them. But I really do think that this is a great barometer in terms of monitoring how our parents are feeling, and also our students, because they're the best touch bases, if you will, with our students to ensure, as well as the teachers, to ensure that the students are getting their needs and educational needs met. So that is the extent of my presentation, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Noguchi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Noonan. All right, the next goal is progress towards goal 3, and that was to ensure social emotional supports are available for all students in the instructional delivery model, so meaning that they were going to be at home. There was a bullet underneath here that didn't end up being on the slide, but the other piece to that is that we were going to be surveying our kids. So there was a pre and a post. What I've done to this date, as of January, we've done a pre, and we've done one in December, and we're going to do another one in March for the end of the year. So you'll have more information at the conclusion of the year. We recognize that the board and administrators are and students are very much in need of the social emotional supports. We've talked about it and the need on a variety of different areas. Central to the social emotional supports are our counseling support. So rather than having 10 slides that we could easily fill up right now, we actually have a whole presentation on our counseling support services after this presentation. So what's not included in that presentation, I have Mr. Herbst sharing a couple slides on the social emotional side of that. So he'll add some information here, and then we'll have Danielle Hinkle share more at a later presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Herbst.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Social emotional supports, as you know, can be provided by a number of individuals. Teachers and site administrators are clearly the first line of support, and the district has invested heavily over the years and this year in professional development for our staff in that area. Just to put some in perspective, some terms that are very, very near and dear in Modesto City Schools and information to our new board members is we're a district that heavily supports positive behavior intervention and supports. Restorative practices in terms of our sites having site-based restorative teams, trauma-informed practices, and I have to give credit to the Curriculum and Professional Development Office this year, a number of worthwhile professional development opportunities just on meeting the social emotional needs of our students. In addition, under the direction of Senior Director of Student Services, Danielle Hinkle, there were a tremendous amount of resources made available to our teachers at all levels, and that was in mind of them being the first line of defense in a distance learning format. And I do believe that that prepared us to truly adequately meet those needs at that first line of defense, so to speak. Alongside of that, the district is incredibly fortunate to employ 45 school counselors and 21 school psychologists to meet the individual needs or group needs should they arise at any of our school sites. In addition, we as a district, we contract out for our more intensive social emotional support. So our social emotional support team consists of 44 student assistance specialists who provide 220 days of support to our K-12 schools. In addition to that, we have mental health clinicians that are placed in strategic locations to meet the needs of our schools within a region. Under the direction of Danielle Hinkle and as a result of the pandemic, we created what was called the Modesto City Schools Social Emotional Hotline. And I'll tell you what, while the numbers have decreased since school has started for obvious reasons, I mean, typically if a student is struggling right now, they're going to be reaching out to a familiar face, either the teacher, the principal, the student assistant specialist at a site. But I will tell you, at a time when the schools weren't open, we were pleased to have upwards of 50 calls that were made. And as a result of that, we were able to make referrals right back out for services. So in a time when schools weren't in session, that hotline really had some impact. Next slide, please. And as Dr. Noguchi talked about, in order to quantify our progress of students having access to social emotional supports, we wanted to ensure our students knew what was available to them. So therefore, under the direction of Danielle Hinkle, we created a survey. And that survey, really, the focus of it is it asked two primary questions. And the survey was given to our students in grades 4 through 12. But the survey asks whether a student knows who, and the second one below it, how to contact someone in order to get the support they need. The other questions ask who they feel comfortable going to when they need that level of assistance. So as you can see by the data, we've made progress in each and every one of the areas. And I think, honestly, from my perspective, very pleased with the high number of students who know who they can contact and how to reach out. And I think that's definitely key, especially in a COVID environment. The other data really indicates that most still, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, their go-to at the sites is typically their teachers across the board, and at the secondary level, those high school counselors. So I think that that's a big piece and a big plug, and we're thankful that we have them. Overall, we're pleased with the data. As Dr. Noguchi said, we are going to give an end of the year in March, and I look forward to seeing these numbers even improve more. And not to belabor, but yeah, Danielle Hinkle is prepared to do a more thorough presentation on what we provide, not only on the counseling front, but also on the social emotional front. So with that, I'd like to turn it back.
Thank you. So the goal number 4, and we only have one more goal after this. So we're coming down to the end of this before we get to questions. So back in May, we were really looking at a fiscal cliff, if you will. We really thought with closing of businesses and just the dire straits California was in at the time that it was going to be a very difficult time. We certainly have found a lot of relief and support, and I'll have Mr. Zerly talk about that in just a minute or two. This is a goal that we were going to have every year. I mean, central to the success of any district is to ensure that we remain fiscally solvent. But central to this is also listening to our stakeholders and listening to you, listening to our staff, and then also listening to community members on ways in which we can shore up either our expenses or look for ways to increase our resources. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zerly.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees. As Dr. Noguchi points out, this is an ongoing goal, but it did take a priority almost a year ago during the initial phases of the pandemic as we were preparing for the 2021 budget development year. And so in order to meet this goal, we decided to reconvene the Budget Study Committee, and here in front of you on this slide, you see the dates that the committee met, and the topics for discussion, and Dr. Noguchi pointed out back in May, we were hearing that we were being faced with a 10% budget reduction just in the matter of 2 months. So we met as a cabinet. We discussed what our budget priorities would be, and then sure enough, the governor's May revise came out, and at that point in time, the governor was proposing a 10% across the board reduction to our local control funding formula. And so you can see what we did down the left side, the dates that the committee met, and the areas of discussion. We are pleased to point out that once the state budget was adopted, there was not a 10% reduction to our funds. But we did go into this year with flat funding or no increases to our revenue. So we maintained the Budget Study Committee over these dates, and we will meet again on February 2nd. It's the last item on this slide to review the governor's 21-22 budget proposal, which again we are pleased to state. We heard last week that there is new funding included in next year's budget. So the goal of this budget study committee around identifying areas to reduce the budget will be put on hold for another year. There's not the need to reduce our budgetary expenditures for 21-22 based on information we're receiving at this point in time. But this committee is made up of stakeholders across the district, and so we want to continue the discussion, continue the transparency with this committee. Even though we're not facing immediate budget reductions, it's good to keep this committee going and continue the discussion for future years. So next slide, please. The committee is made up of various representatives across the district. We have board members on this committee. We have our labor partners. We have district administration, and we have various departments represented on this committee. And the meeting structures and dates are agreed to by the committee. This is not my committee. This is not the superintendent's committee. It's our committee. So we agree to what we're going to discuss and the dates on which the meetings are going to be held. And most recently, we've structured the meetings, even though we are virtual, through Teams, we can have breakout groups. So we break out into small groups to encourage participation, to encourage dialogue and discussion. And then we come back together and the groups report out to the whole as to what they talked about to the entire committee. Next slide. So being a public agency, we don't always have the advantage of increasing revenues like our private partners. But we do have areas that the committee has addressed as priorities in attempt to increase revenues, and that is through an attendance campaign, an earlier online registration campaign, making it easier for our families to register, not in person but online, decreasing our intra-district transfer deficit with neighboring school districts, and this has been a focus since Dr. Noguchi has got here, Mark Herbst as well through Student Support Services, and I'm pleased to report that this year we have decreased the deficit while we still maintain a deficit of students that choose to leave Modesto City Schools and enroll in our neighboring districts. It has decreased. And we are making every effort to ensure that that deficit continues to decrease year over year. A census campaign, and then sometimes just by reducing our expenditures, it is similar to increasing our revenues. So this committee unanimously brought up an energy conservation program, which we are implementing, and I'll be updating the board later on in the year about the progress of the energy conservation measures that we have, and then a certificated employee retirement incentive. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Noguchi.
Thank you. Alrighty, last but not least, we have progress towards goal number 5, and I'm actually going to just have you go to the next slide because I think it's a little bit redundant. So goal number 5 is to further develop our student outcome data reporting system. So this is a goal, again, as I shared earlier, that we have been working on for 3 years. At the last board meeting, December 14th, we showcased the distance learning dashboard, so we don't need to showcase that now to you, and you saw a little bit earlier with Mr. Godot. But next we have the college career dashboard. This dashboard is aligned to the California accountability system, and that particular presentation is going to be shared later on today as well. So I'm not going to have Mr. Salkin and his team share right now because we actually have a whole presentation on this particular dashboard. So next slide. So really this is the next step. So this was my mid-year. This is sharing where we are with the 5 goals relative to the superintendent's goals. We're going to share our counselor dashboard and the social emotional supports later on tonight that align to goal 5 and 3. We are working right now on a learning mitigation plan, which is going to align to goal number 1. What are we doing in intercession? What can we do over the weekends? What are we going to do this summer? How are we going to get this, really focus on mitigating some of the learning loss that's happened over the course of this year? I'm going to report out the academic achievement in a board communication. We are going to continue to market MCS to increase enrollment to support our fiscal side of the house. And we are also going to continue to work and support our parents with the variety of needs that come up. We recognize that while work has been done, there's still a lot more work to be done. Again, this is just a mid-year. We also need to continue developing our relationships with our labor partners, both CSEA and MTA. They're in a really tough spot right now, and that is it's very tough to work in an environment that is in now what the governor proposes deep purple, and we all know that. We're doing it, we're managing, we're working together, but there's still, we can't say enough to the people that are actually doing the work on a day-to-day basis with our students. And then lastly, coming back to you in May with a portfolio with these goals that we've showcased, but progress towards those goals from January and then until March. Next slide. So with that, I do want to turn it over to questions, but lastly, I do want to share that while you did not hear from all the cabinet members, that doesn't mean that they're not doing work. They're busy doing work, and that is aligned to the district goals that I shared at the beginning of this presentation. So with that very long-winded presentation, I appreciate your patience and your time and your energy, and I will open it up to questions either from myself or from the team. So I'll turn it back over to President West.
Thank you for such an in-depth presentation, so much information, and I appreciate the organization that went into this and all the people that worked on this. So it looks like Trustee Brown and then Trustee Irvin.
So I guess I'm on?
Yep. Now you're on, yes.
Okay. All right, I want to thank you, Dr. Noguchi, for this in-depth presentation, and I really want to thank you for the emphasis that's been placed on reaching the parents. I know for years, as we've tried to hold in-person opportunities to reach out and assist parents, we have frequently struggled with very limited attendance. A lot of effort, a lot of emphasis, but very little participation. And I'm really encouraged by what we see with the number of people that are participating. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have technology in homes that it's never been in before. Yep. And I also think that it has to do with the fact that it works well not to have to take care of childcare and other issues that keep parents from being able to attend an in-person session. So hopefully we can learn through this and realize that this avenue, even after COVID, will be a great way for us to reach our parents. So thank you to everyone for that emphasis and the improved outreach that we have found. I know that we will continue to find new ways to reach out to parts of our community that we're not touching yet. So appreciate everybody's efforts on that.
Thank you, Trustee Brown.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Trustee Brown said. I appreciate the in-depth information. Again, I wanted to comment on the parent engagement part, both from, a technology standpoint and really trying to, and the progress made engaging parents from a technology standpoint, which can be very challenging as well. Also, I wanted to also talk about the data. It's nice to be able to see what you have placed and so in depth in the presentation, but to see the tangible results from that. And the data is so something that in the past we have been limited in accessing, or not the capabilities, but the resources and the professional level of expertise in order to utilize the capabilities we have within our district's infrastructure as far as technology. So it looks like it's being maximize, in the areas that we really need to see the. So I'm very pleased with that. Very pleased with all of the accomplishments and the things that we've accomplished in this short period of time that we see. So I was very pleased to see the reports and the information that was provided. And then one more thing about the budget. Did we use all of the CARES Act money that we received the first time?
Mr. Zerly?
Yes, it's a good question, Trustee Irvin. We've allocated and used the dollars that we had a deadline for. Those have been spent, and 2 days before that deadline, with the second funding, COVID funding, we did find out that deadline's been extended for a year. But we were going to meet the deadline for the requirement of the first set of funds. So we have utilized the majority of the CARES dollars and are waiting for the second stimulus, federal stimulus dollars to arrive. Okay.
Thank you. Again, great job.
Trustee Irvin, I just want to go back to, yes, it was great. That was a wonderful organization with the budget and the CARES dollars. But I want to go back to the data piece for just a minute, because this is central to the work that I've focused on since the first month I got here. When I first got here, it literally was a data desert. And that's not a judgment. It was just the structure, and it's just how Modesto City Schools had been running. So you couldn't get attendance, you couldn't get grades, you couldn't get all these things now that are literally at your fingertips, and you're going to see that in a later presentation. However, this wouldn't have happened if we didn't completely change what we call our data warehouses. We literally have taken the data where it once sat in two different data stores, because you had the elementary and the high school, and we've merged it into one. And I just want to say, I don't know that we could have done this if it wasn't for Mr. Sulkin and his team to completely lift up the hood and rearrange everything that's in there to be able to get us to where we are now. So I appreciate that you call that out, because I don't think that we can become that destination district that we speak to in our vision if we don't have data that we can drill down to specific student groups or individual students on identifying exactly what their needs are. Now we've got the data systems. Now we need the training and the understanding, and that is going to take some time. And that is, that's the mental capacity. And so there's going to be a lot of work in that area over this next year on the utilization. So I turn it back over to President West.
Thank you. We're going to go with Trustee Maestas and then Student Representative Carranza.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Noguchi, again for all of that. Coming in as a new board member, getting all of that information. really is helpful for me to see kind of where we are. And the data piece is really important. I was actually gonna ask about the next piece of it in that data or just information until we use the information. And that's the important piece. Gathering and having a bunch of data doesn't help us at all unless we use it. So I'm glad that you talked about that. But there was one specific thing that I had a question about that I'm a little concerned. I guess it's a little concern of mine being in the space that we're at right now. And that is the pre and post assessment data for the ELA and math. In the space that we are right now with kids in distance learning and hybrid learning and right in the middle of a pandemic and things going on in households and things like that, I question, maybe I don't want to say the validity of data in terms of assessment, but I don't know how we're actually going to use math and ELA assessment data in this space that we are now to inform teaching and learning next year or later when we're out of the pandemic. Like, I'm not quite sure what it's going to tell us other than, man, the pandemic hurt us, or we did pretty good in the pandemic. Like, I just don't know where the data are going to move the needle at any point. So I just really have a question about what's the goal of using these data, and how will they help us in the future?
Let me try to answer that. First, it was written down, and it's a goal, and goals that are superintendents that are on the superintendent's goals will be presented to you. So it was asked from the board at that time in May to identify how kids are doing, right? Now, they identified the bullet pre and post for math and English because we'd done a lot of work the year before to get everyone in agreement to use the IABs. This would have been the first year for that, right? And so we had been marching along that train, and we really hadn't gotten off that train yet, and now we are on the COVID train. So part of the reason why it wasn't shared today, it's not already, but I think the interest of the board is just, how are our kids doing? So what I'm going to be presenting to you in a board communication is not just benchmarks, it's DNFs, it's attendance, it's A through G, it's the number of kids that have signed up for AP testing, it's our graduation, it's our dropout. So it's much wider than what has been identified in the superintendent's goals. I mean, I'll add that on there because that was on my goals, but I'm going to try and give a larger breadth. And in going back to how will we use this data, I don't know. I don't know. I think I don't know how you could compare this year with any other year. I don't know how we'll compare this year to future years. I can say we just put our English benchmarks on hold. It was voluntary if they wanted to do it or not, because we are recognizing if they can use it in an informative way to inform their instruction tomorrow or next week, or to collectively as a PLC, then great. But I hear you, and you'll see the data, and you'll either make use of it or not. So I leave that with you.
Yeah, I just quickly on that. Just when we look at all these data and we see how our kids are doing, I think it's just important for us to have that lens of that we're in a pandemic. We've gone from distance to hybrid to back. And so having a lens and going, oh, look at how our kids did or are doing, but understanding that it has had an asterisk on it, right? 2020, yeah. 2021. So just want to keep that in mind.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Student Representative Carranza?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Noguchi and Executive Cabinet for this presentation. I wanted to specifically comment on slide 32, the Student Mental Health Resources Survey. I was really happy to see that the numbers were increasing in there, because when I first saw those numbers at a previous board meeting, I was kind of shocked that a lot of students didn't fully understand the resources that are there for them. So I was happy to see that the numbers are steadily going up, and that it's a continued goal for the future to make sure students understand their resources to support their mental health, especially during COVID.
And I think a piece to note that survey data had 15,000 responses. It wasn't 5 or 10 or 5,000, it was 15,000. So it's really a breadth of where kids are with that. So thank you for that, Carson.
I see Trustee Brown's hand up again. Do you have another question? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, just regarding the use of data, I think it's important that we finish COVID with the benchmark that we need to climb out of and set new goals based on where we are. So I'm glad that we will have that data for our use. So I see that that's a real important use of it.
Trustee Marks?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were going to have comments, but because this was a report, I just wanted to say I appreciate all of the hard work that went into this report and helping us understand where we are. And then I loved seeing the data dashboard. I remember when we voted on it, when we paid to, hire the company, whatever, to do it, and wondering what it was going to look like when we finally got to see it. So it was really great to see the little bars across and see where we are for the last 3 years, or, well, it looked like it was 19, 20, and 21, yeah. So it did 19, 20, and 21. But just to see the comparison, I think will help us in the future. We do know that this will have a dip in it, for our students. But I also appreciate, too, even Carson pointing out that, the mental health and the social emotional health of our students and just how, and our teachers and staff, just where they are, that they are doing fairly well. And then the support services that were also shared on what is available for them with mental health and the hotline and all of that. Because those were all concerns that we had, grave concerns last year. For our students being isolated for so long, and then starting the new year and not being, many of them not being able to come back to the classroom was really difficult. So I appreciate seeing all of this and seeing where it aligns with the goals and just having it all available in one report. That was really helpful. And I like that we could catch up our new board members too on all of it and get us all together on the same page. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just before we move on, I want to say I'm a little bit blown away by the number of responses that we received from our surveys and our questions and collecting the data. I know for me, just personally, I'm inundated with emails of people wanting my opinion and wanting me to take a survey, and it's so much. And so the fact that our parents and our students have responded so generously, I'm really pleased with that. And I also think Miss Noonan, with all of the different social media and ways that she goes about trying to connect with people is truly amazing work. I appreciate that too. And Miss Noonan, do we now have any comments from the public?
No, there are no comments on this particular item.
Thank you. So this was, if there are no other questions or comments from the board, this was a report only. And so I'd like to move on. I noticed the time on the next items. Looks like we have maybe about another hour to go. And unless anyone really needs a break right now, I'd kind of like to power through this. Does anyone need a break at all, or we doing okay?
I need 5 minutes.
All right. Well, let's take a break for 5 minutes, and if we can have the clock up, please, and then we will go to our next item. Thank you.
Chad, your thing is not muted. There you go. It's muted now. It's good now. Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. It did feel good to take a little stretch. Trustee Marks, you have a hand up. Do you have anything? Oh, okay. I'd like to go on to the next item, which is B3, and that will be our report on college and career readiness counselor dashboard. And I believe this is Mr. Selkin.
Yes. Good evening, President West and Board of Trustees, as well as Dr. Noguchi. Thanks for the opportunity to present the counselor's dashboard this evening. Specifically, you guys made my job very easy on this presentation. You definitely get it from the previous conversations about what data is about. And we're fortunate to have your support as well as the superintendent and cabinet and the talented team that we have to develop this system, because the difference between our system in terms of architecture in the warehouse and Amazon is nothing other than the volume of data. We have the same complex tools that we can develop for this. And that's one thing that tonight, when I turn over to my colleague Ryan, is going to show you the actual value of this tool relative to counselors. And then Ms. Hinkle will later on kind of tie that together of the work that she's doing with her staff. But specifically, we got to remember that this has kind of been an evolution, so to speak, of our systems. Last year, we talked about it earlier about the accountability and academic achievement of the dashboard. Then just before the holidays, we went over distance learning. And now to this evening, we're going to go through the counselor's dashboard. It's specifically going to point into two different systems. And I'm just giving you this background so as we go throughout this next year and in the following year, you'll see how we're pulling from different systems to harvest this data to make it intelligent information. Specifically, we're going to pull from our student information system, PowerSchool, as well as TESS, which is a system that we contract with the University of California for them to assess our students' transcripts for getting A to G prep in some other areas also. So you can see this system that we have developed here with this whole team effort and support is not just kind of data for the data's sake, but it's about student level data. And that's one thing I have to say, that this data, I'll use it interchangeably, is predictive type of data and proactive data, which is a little bit unique. If you look at other districts around the nation, they're getting post-mortem data typically. And that's a lot of the state dashboards are post-mortem. So that's one thing that's unique at Modesto City Schools that you don't see on a national basis, is predictive data as well as proactive data, specifically with the counselor's dashboard. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Ryan to go through the tool just to kind of show you. And remember, this isn't a data kind of driven presentation, so some of the data is just kind of fictitious in some nature or shape, but it's really to showcase the tool itself. So Ryan, if you want to take us through it.
You bet. All right. Well, today, as Russ mentioned, we're excited to share with you some of these great tools that are being developed to help our counselors and our administrators with their work in preparing our students for the future. Given that this report is slightly more technical, actually, after that presentation, it's probably equally technical, but my plan is to show you a couple areas of the dashboard in detail and then summarize the remaining or redundant information for the sake of time and your sanity. So let's get rolling. So this work aligns with District Goals 1 and 3 as we focus on achievement and making data more accessible to our stakeholders. We just heard about that. It sounds familiar. It should, because Dr. Noguchi just mentioned that. This directly aligns with her goal of providing real-time data dashboards to support monitoring and accountability. So some background. Schools in California are subject to the state's accountability system, the California School Dashboard. This dashboard reports a number of measures on each district and school, such as statewide testing performance in ELA or English and math, graduation rates, attendance, and discipline. It also reports the percentage of graduates each year who are prepared for college or careers. This is an important part of our mission as a school system to prepare our students for success. To better equip our counselors and our school administrators with the tools they need to measure student progress in this area, we need to understand how it is measured and how we have performed in recent years. So as we look more closely at this college and career readiness indicator on the California School Dashboard, we see that the last reported percent of graduates who are college career prepared declined by 3% over the year prior. I should note that, though in the midst of school closures, our graduating class of 2020 did rebound a little bit back up to 38.3% prepared But that's not pictured here because California will not be releasing a California dashboard this school year due to the school closures. So still though, this data raises questions. What caused this? How's this measured? What does California consider as criteria for a student to be prepared? These are important questions because to be a destination district, we want parents to know that their students will leave our schools ready for what comes next. Beyond the requirement of graduating high school, the state currently uses 8 factors to determine college and career readiness. They're adding more, but for now it's these. And you can see that these areas include performance on statewide testing, AP and IB exams, the completion of college credit coursework, demonstrating biliteracy in another language, completing military leadership or career technical education pathways, and of course, completing college entrance requirements or A to G requirements, so they're called. But these are all measured after a student graduates. And we knew we needed something that provided progress, or as Russ was mentioning, predictive data, so our school counselors and administrators could more easily determine which students aren't making progress towards this definition of readiness. So our newest dashboard is in some ways similar to our other dashboards, as it has some top-level measurements known as key performance indicators, or KPI. A counselor would see these KPI on the main dashboard screen, much like you'd see on the dashboard in your car, just an indicator that everything's going well or not. These little KPI cards turn red when they're comparatively worse than the year before, and green when better. One example of a KPI on this dashboard is the rate of students earning at least 1 D or F. To graduate, a student must pass their classes and earn specific types of credit on their transcripts. And additionally, to enter a 4-year college, their transcripts must consist of grades that are a C- or better. So, tracking this D and F rate is helpful. The dashboard also measures the percent of students who have not earned enough high school credits to be on track for graduation, depending on their grade level and term. For many of our slides today, I'll be using demo data from our development environment. This isn't actual or current data. As Russ mentioned, I'm focusing instead on the features and supports provided by the new dashboard reports. With grades still being processed for the semester 1, additional data can be provided at a later date and a board communication if you're so interested. And I was listening. Sounds like you're interested, so we'll get right on that. So each dashboard report or screen has visualizations or charts and graphs to help the user disaggregate these key performance indicators by different schools, terms, or time periods, student groups, and special programs. Beyond just the visuals, a counselor can further limit their search or view using filters. So I presented recently the attendance dashboards, or the distance learning dashboards, and you should see some commonality here as we're going through these in the layout. So our users are familiar with these. By default, the visuals or charts will show data, all available data. However, by clicking on the filter icons that you see here along the left side of the dashboard, you can see there are many additional options. For instance, I may want to limit my historical grades DNF rate search by a specific graduation credit type, such as math credit or AP courses. The filters would, jumping along here, the filters would let me narrow my search in this way. It's pretty powerful. They're a powerful addition to our tool belt. They allow us to apply complex combinations or parameters on the data to track nearly any student group, program, or time period. As an example of how I might use the filters, let's imagine I'm a counselor at Johansen High School, and I want to see how my English learners are doing in terms of their D or F rate. After navigating to the grades report page, I could click the institution filter and check the box next to Johansen. Now I click the back arrow, and I go back to the filtered report page. Back on the grades report page, I notice that the data has now been reduced to only my school's data, and I scan the page for the bar chart that reads D and F student rate by English proficiency. I see each category of English learner, and I see that my English learners who have already been reclassified as now fluent in English have a smaller 2020-21 school year bar or rate than previous years. I place my cursor over the bar, and a data box pops up, showing me the count and rate of this group of students earning at least one D or F in the first quarter. I'd like to do a little more digging and perhaps zero in on some specific students. It's kind of important, so I'm going to need a list. Let's give this a try. By clicking on that same blue bar, I can select Drill Through and Student List. And this reveals a list of each student and course in which a D or F grade was earned. The list also has helpful student and counselor search boxes, and I decided I'd like to sort the list by course name to determine if there's any patterns in the courses that students are earning these Ds or Fs in. You can see how we moved from the top level performance indicator cards to a report view, and then chose our filters and finally zeroed in on an actionable list of students. That's where the magic happens. Let's take a look at another counselor dashboard report that helps us to see whether students are taking and passing the right classes to meet their four-year college entrance requirements, or we call them the A to G requirements. All right, so this set of performance indicators allows staff to see what % of students have made expected progress taking and passing the right courses for entrance to California State Universities and the University of California. Students are disaggregated into 3 categories: not meeting requirements, nearly meeting requirements, and meeting requirements. And of course, this is based off of their grade and term that we're currently at. So again, predictive and tracking along the way, whether they're making progress. In this example, I've selected the button for CSU requirements. As a result, up at the top, you notice that those cards, the KPI for UC data, are now blank. If I were a counselor at Grigori interested in my foster students, I'd need to apply some filters. So let's do that. I'd begin with picking my school, Grigori, using that institution filter, go back to the report, and I'd click the student group filter icon and select foster youth. You can see here that I can also select more than one filter, including selecting my own name to filter the list by the counseling caseload assigned to me. Here I can see my foster youth students disaggregated by grade level. By hovering my cursor, again, over those bars, the red bar next to my school name, I can see that 2 students are not meeting requirements. I can access a list of students by drilling through, just as I did on the grade report. This specialized drill-through list provides helpful information about each student, including which A to G credit requirement is deficient in red, and whether the student is meeting the overall GPA requirement for college entrance. And again, in progress, where should they be as a sophomore, as a junior, and then all the way through to finishing up their senior year. So for the sake of time, as I promised, I'd like to simply summarize the remaining college and career readiness counselor dashboard reports. These include reports that measure whether students have completed or nearly completed career technical education pathways, what % of students have passed 2 or more AP or IB exams, the % of students who have earned college credit already, students making progress towards state seal of biliteracy requirements in a foreign language, ELA and math statewide testing percentages, and students in need of credit recovery in order to graduate using just the MCS graduation requirements. So I should also note that only approved users within the organization will have access to this dashboard to protect student privacy. That's a big deal. So at this time, a pilot group of counselors and administrators have been given access to the dashboard to put it through its paces, provide feedback. It's always fun. After making some final adjustments and changes based on their input, we'll be expanding access to the dashboard and training the remaining school counselors and administrators in February. And we're planning a number of in-person trainings as well as self-paced training options for them. They tend to be pretty busy. So I really appreciate your time and attention this evening. And are there any questions that we might entertain for you?
I'm going to start with Trustee Marks and then Trustee Irvin.
Thank you. Great report. Love seeing all these dashboards. I, of course, always like the color and the charts and stuff. That's been something I've always said, just because I'm very visual. But I also like to see the numbers just to compare, where are we, where are we. So I wanted to know, in the future, how are we going to see this information? Are we going to do a once a year or a couple of times a year report? We used to see a report like this, or a report on how our students were doing with how many students had applied to different colleges, and then how many, the percent that made it through all the A to G requirements, and then were able to go. So how are we going to see this, and IB students and all of that?
So Ryan, let me answer that question. I think that would be a good discussion to have as a board when we get to the end of the year, when we're setting goals for next year. We can do it. The problem with data is that different data sets come in at different times of the year. It's not everything comes in and we can now, it would be awesome to have it all in August and do an autopsy on the year before, right? But it doesn't happen that way. But what we can do is we can identify the key performance indicators. Is it A to G? Is it IB? And then we can give you the dates the finalized report, and then collectively we can have that conversation when we're doing goals in May, and you can give us direction on that.
Okay. And also ethnicity, it's really helpful. I know before 2000 we didn't put students in ethnicity categories, but since then we have been, and it really does help us see where we need to, if there's certain population groups that we really need to focus on, so that we might help them succeed and be able to figure out, what is it that we might be missing out on, that they're, that we're just need to tweak a little bit to help them. So thank you. That'd be great. So in May. So ask you again in May is what you're saying.
I'll bring it. I'll bring it part of the end of year processing. I'll remember. I'll edit it.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you.
And next will be Trustee Irvin and then Trustee Mejia.
Yes, again, great presentation on this new counselor dashboard. And it's just, I think this is going to be one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal for counselors, in our district, to really pinpoint as much as possible the needs and the tracking and things and to be able to provide the support, the more targeted support for our students with this new counselor dashboard. So I'm glad we're finally got to the promised land, so to speak, and be able to assist our students and our parents and planning a much more targeted pathway for each of our students. So this is really good to see this come to fruition. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mejia and then Trustee Brown.
Yeah, in the same wavelength, I think I'm very encouraged by what the potential, what I could target students that historically have fallen to the cracks sometimes, and partly because you don't catch them early or interventions that need to focus on them. So I'm really excited, and I'm actually I can see the potential for ongoing and planning and maybe even early on figuring out potential patterns down the road, like even as early as 8th grade, figuring out where kids need to be so they can get to those goals. So I'm really excited and great presentation. I'm looking forward to chewing on more and getting some very positive results as you dig into school sites. So thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
I'm really pleased that the word proactive is such an important part of this. And as I see this, I'm wondering if we have some specific professional development scheduled or planned for counselors so that they can all work together at using this data efficiently?
Yes. So we've got a pilot group of counselors who already have access, and they have for a little bit now. So we'll be meeting to give them a more in-depth training and actually get some feedback and go hands-on with them next week. And then in February, towards the end of February, we'll have a full-blown, let's bring in all the counselors and administrators. As I said, live. Well, this live can be in a Teams meeting, right? In a virtual meeting, but then also we'll be producing some self-paced professional development, either for those that want to hear it again, because I'm that good, or because they happen to miss it because they are very busy.
Thank you. I think Trustee Irvin and Mejia, your hands are still raised, so if you don't have another question, if you can put your hands down. You have another question?
No, I'm putting my hands down.
All right. Thank you. I want to say, wow, when I was a counselor, I wish I had something like this. It would have made my job so much easier. So I'm really pleased that we're going to be able to provide that for our counselors in this district. So my question is, I would love to hear the feedback on this dashboard. So if, I'm assuming we won't be able to have another report, but can you maybe include some of that information in maybe a board communication just so we can find out what, an update on what happens after you do get your feedback with the pilot group?
Yeah, you bet. We're going to, as a part of that, as I mentioned, we'll be integrating a lot of those changes that they recommend into the dashboard before we release it to the whole group. So, we'll certainly be paying close attention to what they say, and it'll be really easy to share it with you.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Noguchi.
I don't know why, but I can't put my hand down. I just got up. I've been trying to put my hand down, and I can't put it down.
The button is very confusing. I thought my hands was already down, but it looks pretty similar. I don't even know if it's been so long staring at the screen.
Yeah, mine's stuck for whatever reason. It's just won't let me change it now.
All right, thank you. Ms. Noonan, do we have any comments from the public on this topic?
Yes, we do. We have one comment. I will go ahead and read it now. It's from Mr. John Walker. As I mentioned before, Mr. John Walker is a parent and former board trustee as well as a substitute teacher. His comment is as follows. Good evening, trustees and superintendent. It is what I do not see that has me concerned and is surely not unique to MCS. CTE, otherwise known as Career Technical Education, and Pathways are barely mentioned. The Thursday CTE program overview does not appear to cover computer science courses or pathways either. MCS has 2 listed computer science pathways at Bayer and Modesto High. I cannot tell from the website what either pathway entails. Introductory advanced placement computer science courses are insufficient to get into an impacted UC's computer science program, and one AP Java programming course is also insufficient. Davis appears to have the AP introduction courses, as does Enox. Ms. Moore, Amanda Moore, the principal at Enox, works tirelessly on this issue and has added network security and game programming from Johansson. That being said, like many districts, there is no fundamental foundational computer science program, and our students are at a severe disadvantage competing for college slots. There is a path forward, but if you started today, it would take 2 school years to get to a solid foundation, and that is fast. Inaction means 2 years becomes 3 years. I was on the, in quotes, destination district plan on day 1. Offer something no one else is. I am asking the governance team to make this a priority this year. I bring a singularly unique set of tools to help solve this problem. All you have to do is make it a priority and call. 7-0, please make this a priority quickly. And that concludes the public comment.
Thank you. If there are no further comments from the board, this was a report only, so we will move on to item B4, which is a report on Modesto City Schools counseling
It looks like Mr. Irvin raised his hand.
I think he was having a hard time getting his hand down as well.
No. I was raising my hand in response to John Walker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I just wanted to say I concur with him in terms of the pathways for computer science, and we should be looking to offering more. Again, I use my son as an example. I used to have to the Bay Area to get exposed to that, and now he is a cybersecurity engineer now. But in order to get the exposure for him to really develop his skill sets, I had to take him to the Bay Area back then. So we need to be looking at what can we do within our district to expose our students to the pathways of computer science, and to a degree that it leads to something else. That in college they springboard into college already with the knowledge necessary to navigate computer science careers that are woefully understaffed in our nation and in our state in terms of cybersecurity engineers. There's just not enough of them. A lot of.
Thank you.
So
Dr.
West, President West. So this particular board report is not about CTE. At our next board meeting on the 8th or the 9th, we do have a report on CTE, and then we can better explain where we are with our different pathways, computer and others. But there's been extensive work done in the last 2 years on that. So if we have questions, comments, concerns around CTE, I would suggest that we wait until the next board meeting when we have a report on it.
Duly noted.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. You have some information on this, so we've had some discussions on it. And so for John's information, John Walker, we are working on it, just wasn't in this report. So
yeah.
Great. So if your hand is up and you don't have any question or comment, please try to put your hand down, Mr. Irvin. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Thank you so much. Okay, B4, report on Modesto City Schools counseling services. I'm excited for this one. Mr. Herbst and Ms. Hinkle.
Yeah, and on this one, I am pleased. I will turn this one gladly over to the very, very capable Senior Director of Student Support Services, Ms. Danielle Hinkle. So Danielle, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Board President West, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, Executive Cabinet, and guests. I'm Danielle Hinkle, Senior Director, Student Support Services. And as mentioned, I will be providing a report on the great work of our junior high and high school counselors in Modesto City Schools. I will also be sharing the types of support provided in the areas of academic advisement, social emotional support, and support for college and careers. Lastly, I will review the work of our district counseling task force and outline next steps. Work of the counselors falls in line with district goals 1 and 3, specifically related to having a multi-tiered system of support for all students, as well as regular communication with students, staff, parents, and the community. As Mr. Herbst mentioned earlier, we're very fortunate in Modesto City Schools to have 45 school counselors serving our 12 secondary school sites. Our school counselors hold a pupil personnel services credential, which includes completion of an additional 48 post-baccalaureate units and training in a professional school counseling program. Additionally, we have a number of school counselors who are also licensed professional clinical counselors under the California Board of Behavioral Sciences. All this to say, our school counselors possess a wide range of abilities, education, and training to assist and support the diverse student population in Modesto City Schools. The bulk of the school counseling work can be categorized into 3 primary areas: academic planning and advisement, post-secondary planning and guidance, whether that be college or career, as well as support with social emotional needs and personal development. As with all educators in Modesto City Schools, the counselors have had monumental shifts in their work as in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of these shifts have been mentioned earlier, but I'd like to bring them up again. The counselors have been the sole support of the district social emotional hotline. They've implemented an online appointment scheduling system to make it easier for parents and students to schedule virtual appointments. They've implemented daily lunchtime office hours, and they endured a very heavy lift in helping to answer questions and process contracts for the increased number of students in the Modesto Virtual Academy. Our counselors are navigating hundreds of emails and phone calls each week with many late hours, and like everyone, our counselors are going the extra mile to support students and families and are to be commended for their work. In addition to our school counselors, we have a college counselor at each of our comprehensive high schools. Some of you may recall that the college counselors were implemented back in the late 1990s in response to the increased complexity in navigating the college application and financial aid process. Annually, college counselors receive additional training through California State University and the University of California workshops, as well as training with the Western and National Associations for College Admissions Counseling. College counselors provide a strong layer of support in being the college and financial aid expert on the high school campus. They conduct application and financial aid workshops. They schedule visits with college representatives from across the United States, and they maintain enhanced partnerships with Modesto Junior College, California State University, and University of California admissions officers. The college counselors support all students on a campus who desire to attend college. And just to provide a little bit of data in the area of our college counselors, our Modesto City Schools seniors in the class of 2020, so the class that just graduated, that class earned more than $10 million in scholarships. And believe it or not, that dollar amount was really right in alignment with the prior year. So even though we had schools closed at the end of the year, our college counselors were really supporting the work and helping students achieve that goal of obtaining a scholarship. In addition to the scholarships, we had more than 1,000 students who earned a Cal Grant in the class of 2020, earning each student on average about $1,600 or so, depending on the type of university or college they attended, which resulted in an additional 1.6 million plus of aid awarded to our Modesto City Schools students. Some of you may have heard of late that Congress is taking some steps to streamline the process for the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. This is the first step for students in receiving financial aid. And in addition, the governor's proposed budget includes language surrounding a new requirement for schools to confirm that all high school seniors have completed the FAFSA. If this provision moves forward, we know that our college counselors will be instrumental in helping to achieve this goal for our students. And taking a little closer look at the academic advisement provided by our counselors, this really consists of actions such as assisting with course selection and scheduling to make sure that our students are on track to meet the graduation requirements, as well as college admissions requirements. I just want to put a little plug in for that counselor dashboard. Some of those reports that counselors will be able to access and the drill through process is going to be a game changer in being able to track and monitor this work. Our counselors conduct class presentations as well as four-year planning sessions with students. They assist with credit recovery and remediation options such as summer school and extended summer school, as well as enrollment in additional class periods like 0 and 8th period. When needed, our counselors provide recommendations to our alternative education settings, such as the Modesto Virtual Academy, Elliott, and G230. They are the key facilitator of communication between parents, students, and teachers. And they also often serve as team members for our student success teams, as well as 504 and IEP teams. As mentioned previously, all of these services have continued while students are in distance learning. The work looks different, lots of virtual presentations and meetings, but the work still continues even in a distance learning format. In the area of social emotional support, our school counselors provide student check-ins for those in need. They provide presentations and information on topics such as managing stress or anxiety, and our counselors also are on the front lines with providing crisis counseling services. When a higher level of mental health support or care is needed, our counselors are in close contact with our wonderful contracted partners from the Center for Human Services, Stanislaus County Behavioral Health, and other community agencies. Our counselors are really at the helm and assisting with referrals to all of these outside agencies for that higher level of care. In the area of college and career, students are provided education and guidance on the subject area A through G college entrance requirements. And as mentioned previously, the college counselor coordinates those site visits from college reps. Students receive help and assistance in completing college financial aid and scholarship applications. One area that we've had great improvement in this last year is really supporting our students with concurrent enrollment in college courses, specifically at Modesto Junior College, which really means that kids are taking an additional class outside the school day through MJC, whether that be in the evening or on the weekends. And while these individuals are not counselors, you may recall that we have career navigators in place at our high schools as part of the CPE Strong Workforce Grant. Probably hear more about that at the next board meeting. And our navigators provide important support to counselors in working with our high school students who are enrolling in MJC courses. We had some new procedures that were implemented this year. We, in the fall semester, had 249 students enrolled in approximately 383 college level courses this past fall, and that's really more than double where we were last spring. Our career navigators not only support the work of dual and concurrent enrollment in MJC courses, but they also meet with every senior enrolled in a CTE course to engage in discussions around career exploration, as well as CTE opportunities like internships and apprenticeships, and additional junior college courses and pathways. Last but not least, I wanted to share some of the great work that's going on behind the scenes with counselors. We've engaged an MCS counselor task force that's come together this year to take an in-depth look at our current practices. This group has worked to determine the desired elements of a district-wide counseling program to really refine the work that we're doing. And they've done this work through the lens of what is it that students need to be successful. In addition, we've looked at some of the different barriers that need to be addressed in achieving that great work of supporting students through high school. The end goal of the Counselor Task Force is to outline and define the elements of a Modesto City Schools counseling program with recommendations to move that work forward. In addition to that, we have another group of counselors who are participating alongside Sacramento County Office of Education in some work called the Counselor Community of Practice. And in that work, we're engaged in professional development and a book study with Trish Hatch and the American School Counseling Association, or ASCA group, and their model of school counseling. And got to give a great thank you to Dr. Noguchi for getting some of our counselors and myself into that work. In the coming months, we'll be bringing the Modesto City Schools counseling program forward to administration, district leadership, and the Modesto Teachers Association for their feedback and input, with the goal of implementing our district-wide program across all schools in the fall of 2021. And at this time, I know this was a very brief, broad overview of the work of counselors, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I have feedback. I'm looking to see if anyone has hands raised. Trustee Irvin?
Again, good report. I just want to know how integrated, or if the counselors will be a little more integrated with those students choosing a path of technical education, career technical education, to help prepare them. I know in the past, years in the past, that was kind of frowned upon amongst the counselors, college counselors, in terms of that. I'm putting that out there back in the day. So have we moved the pendulum a little further to help provide guidance for those students as well? Or will we?
Trustee Urban, I would just comment that regardless of a student's path or their chosen, desired path after high school, the college counselors are well equipped. If you're a student coming in saying, I want to pursue this particular CTE program or pathway, they certainly assist students in knowing a variety of options to them, whether that be a vocational school, a community college, or perhaps even a four-year college.
Okay, because I say that because from my experience, I mentored a student, former Modesto City School student. I think this is important for the counselors because that way they can help advise students that they don't get targeted by unscrupulous technical schools, like having them go into debt for $35,000 with student loans for a job that's going to pay them $15 an hour to start. Some of those kind of that kind of knowledge to be able to guide them, because I run into a lot of students who went to schools like that and got out and they got student loan debt, and they're making $14, $15 an hour, and then they're going to have to pay that student loan back for that technical or vocational technical program that they went through. So kind of advisement on those schools that it would be more beneficial to them and maybe align closer with our district goals and things like that.
Yeah, I would say too, the college counselors are very dialed in with regard to the expense that students incur in going to the various, college or vocational programs, and it is at the top of their priority list to try to provide options that are family friendly, affordable options. They absolutely do not. They're not looking at the for-profit colleges and whatnot, not sharing that information with students because they know it's not a viable option for most people.
Trustee Mejia? Trustee Mejia?
As like a comment, and then maybe you can follow up with me later. I'm just curious to know how much training the counselors have had in terms of like students that are like undocumented under the California Dream Act and some of those things, because I feel like sometimes there's opportunities missed maybe where students don't feel like there's those resources for them. And I know we have those populations in some of our some pockets of our district, and I think it's important. I just want to know if they're receiving like additional training to be able to kind of be up to date, because I know I get comments from parents where they confuse like the National Dream Act, potential legalization with DACA and with the California Dream Act, which is completely two different. So I just wanted to make sure that if there hasn't been, I'm just curious to know how much training on that. And you don't have to answer it right now. You can get back to me later.
Okay. In short, I'll just say it really quick because I need to give a quick plug. Our college counselors are well versed in the California Dream Act and do assist students with completing that paperwork and process. But thank you for that question. We could always provide more professional development and training in that area, but the short answer is yes.
I see no more hands at this time. I loved this report. Thank you so much, Ms. Hinkle, for all of this information. I know it's difficult to imagine how counselors can keep busy during COVID, because so much of what what we do is personal and face-to-face. I have to say, Dr. Noguchi and I went to take a tour of La Loma a few months ago, La Loma Junior High School, and their counselor, Noel Marcelino, was in the process that day of doing classroom presentations online through all of the PE classes. So I know they're still busy and they're still working, and I think that's awesome. You know, counseling is dear to my heart. I feel that since I've been a part of the board that there has been supplemental funds that might be available, supplemental concentration funds, and I really, really want to promote and push the hiring of more counselors, particularly at the K-6 level. I'm so sad that we don't have that. I have always felt that if we provide counseling services at the K-6 levels, then we're gonna stop talk about being proactive. We're gonna stop a lot of the problems that kids have while they're small problems when the kids are young, instead of waiting until they're older to provide those services. So I just want to go on record as saying wholeheartedly, if we can in any way hire more counselors. You know, the recommended counselor from ASCA, the ratio is 250 to 1, and I think we're very, very far from that. It's really hard to do that, but if we can hire more counselors, credentialed counselors, and also put them at the elementary level, I would love to see that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now to the public. Ms. Noonan, do we have any comments from the public?
No, we do not on this item.
Okay. Trustee Marks? You're muted.
I was waiting for the comment time, and I appreciate your comments. I just appreciate all the hard work that our counselors are doing, and I thank you, Ms. Hinkle, for all of the sharing the amount of funds that our students have received, $10 million. I remember when we had the discussion as a board back in probably 99 or 2000 as to whether we were going to have a college counselor. That was a huge position for us, and it was hiring. At the time, we only had, I want to say, 5 high schools because Enoch's and Grigori weren't built yet. But I remember that discussion, and we were going to share counselors at each college, but the board said, no, we really think it's important to have a college counselor. And I remember pushing for that, and the board voted for that. So we were so happy. And then we created a position to help keep all those college counselors in just working together. And in fact, we got the Golden Bell Award because of how well we were doing, and we did track how much funding our students got. And so just to hear how much it is now was really exciting to hear the $10 million. And then also the 1,000 students that took advantage of the other opportunity to receive some funding too for college. And and I'm hoping that as we move forward, we look at especially students taking that data that we talked about earlier and actually being able to identify students that are really struggling, and especially between grades, between 8th and 9th grade, and I think it's 6th and 7th grade where they really struggle with their grades and they just need a little extra boost, a little extra bump. I know 9th grade's been a critical year for a lot of students, and sets them off, they get discouraged, and they really, and by sophomore year, they feel like they can't graduate. So I know that's a very critical year. So I'm hoping as we go through this college counselor task force that you talked about, maybe that's something they can focus on and really identify the students. I don't know if that's a focus that it's going to be on, but that's something that I'm passionate about. So I think it's really good. This was great to hear all that's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Ms. Hinkle and Mr. Herbst. And we will move on now to our approval of acceptance of the district's 2019-2020 financial statements and auditor's report of all funds, including bond measures D and E. Mr. Zerly?
Thank you, President West. Good evening again, trustees. Education Code requires that we provide an annual audit of our financial records, and prior to asking the board to accept the auditor's report. We have Bill Williams here with us virtually, who's been waiting patiently to do a brief presentation and overview of our annual audit for the last fiscal year. So, Bill, are you out there?
I'm out there. Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Everything good? Okay. We use Teams all the time, so I should be a pro at this whole thing. I don't even have to worry about raising my hand and putting it down because I'm just going to talk real quick. I was telling Tim that as the night goes on, my presentations get shorter. So we switched over to a PowerPoint. We think it was much easier in our virtual world we're in right now than trying to scroll through a 121-page audit report with you. So I will get going here. It seemed to go pretty well. You're my third board meeting this week. First virtual one, obviously, for us. So we just want to thank Dr. Noguchi and the board for inviting us to come present this again to you. The second thing that kind of gets forgotten sometimes, and so we just really don't ever want to forget that, is to thank the site staff, those that we were able to actually go to before everything closed down on us, for working with us, and those that had to send things virtually via email on our portal. To thank them for doing that timely, and Kim Kamstra and Michelle and everyone else in the fiscal department for working with us this year. It was a challenge, obviously, for everybody, but it went really well with your district. Your audit report's 1 of 10 that we've issued out of 90, so you can tell that not all of them are going as well as yours did. It's been quite the struggle for us this year. You can imagine the districts were really bombarded with a lot of things that they weren't planning on dealing with either, with distance learning and using the COVID funds and everything like that. And we were kind of getting bombarded with emails and form reviews and conference calls and everything like that. Kind of put us back a little bit behind too. But we got yours done. So congratulations to all of you guys for working with us and getting this done. So just, I know there's a couple new board members here. Just want to kind of let you know about what our audit process is. Usually early in the year, under a normal year, we would go out and visit your school sites, a sample of those. We would look at attendance. We would look at student body accounting, things like that. This year is most likely going to be remote. We will be looking at some of the distance learning documentation. It's going to look quite different than it has in the past. The student body audits will probably not visit the sites because there's really nothing going on out there. And then once we do the site work, we come into the district office for our first visit. We look at your internal controls, your procedures. We update our long-term obligations, do a lot of compliance testing, both state and federal compliance early in the year. Then once the books are closed and your unaudited actuals are ready, we come back out with our team and audit the ending numbers to make sure that those are okay. So we just want to also let you know that a few board members, this is something that we've done every single year with your district, that we meet with the administrative, the fiscal administration, go over the report for about an hour, quite slowly. Then we meet with a few members of the board, usually some union representatives, and go through it again. So we already did that in mid-December, I believe that was done. So this is really meant just to be a summary for the rest of everyone. So your independent auditor's report, there's an opinion in your audit report. There's 3 actually. The very first one really just talks about your financial statements, and as they're presented in the audit report are materially correct, meaning that as you're looking through them, the numbers are good. There is, in the back of your report, there's an opinion on internal controls. We had one finding because there was one audit adjustment we found this year. It's really become pretty, I wouldn't say common, but we've definitely found more audit adjustments this year than we have in the past, with a lot of very clean, historically clean districts. And we know that the remote work environment, the COVID distractions, the distance learning distractions definitely contributed to that. We've just had audit adjustments places we've never had them before, and one was your district, unfortunately, but it was fixed. It wasn't a massive mistake, and there's already a procedure in place to get a second set of eyes on that kind of a closeout, complicated calculation that happens at the end of the year. We have an opinion on federal compliance. There were no federal compliance findings, which is great because those usually are attached to funding. And there was just one state compliance finding for unduplicated pupil count data at one of the high schools. It was not district-wide. There just seemed to be a glitch at one high school. And we've run into this similar finding before where the program used to track your student meal status does not talk real well with CalPads, which is CDE's data tracking. So we think pretty strongly that that's exactly what happened. It was kind of a data glitch there. But for new board members or even existing board members, if you heard my presentation last year, probably the best section of your auto report, because it can get very lengthy and cumbersome, the best section to probably read to really is meant to be a cliff notes of your auto report, and it starts on PDF page 7, because we know usually you might have a electronic copy, which we're trying to go to more, obviously this year. But that's really the only part of the audit report that's on the district's letterhead, so it's really easy to spot. But again, it's really meant to be a cliff notes. It talks about your entity-wide financial statements, your debt, your fixed assets, your bigger funds. It discusses all those kind of in a really short little storyline. So we really recommend board members to at least read through that. Your financial statements, there's a statement of net position and statement of revenues and expenses. Those are on pages 17 and 18. So those, whenever you see net position anywhere on your financial statements, that's referring to district-wide financial statements. So that is all of your district funds combined together. That would be your general fund, adult fund, child development fund, for all your different funds that you see in your unaudited actuals, collapsed together along with your fixed assets and long-term obligations, such as your general obligation bonds, your capital leases, your OPEB liability, your net pension liability, your fair share of that. I'll get into that in a little bit more. Behind that first set of financials are your fund financial statements, which those names of those funds should look very familiar to you. The large funds are reported separately, and the smaller funds are aggregated together in a non-major column. But those non-major fund financial statements are in the back of your report, the individual funds that make up that total on pages 102 and 103, PDF pages. And then right behind your financial statements are your notes to the financials, gives you much more information on, who are your payables payable to, who are your receivables receivable from, what your long-term debt is, your payment schedules on that debt. And then way behind that, you'll find additionally supplementary information, such as there's a bunch of stuff in there on OPEB, on net pension liability, your ADA, instructional minutes, your schedule of federal awards, which will tell you how much money was spent on each federal grant. That's in the back of your report. So your statement of net position, again, this is your big combined entity-wide balance sheet financial statement, basically. Your net position was $11 million. Your unrestricted was a deficit, $323 million. I'll tell you why in just a minute. Your GO bonds, $115.7 million. Your outstanding, those are obviously funded by your taxpayers, good type of debt. You qualified school construction bonds are the same, $16.4 million. Capital leases are about $10 million. Largest is a lighting retrofit, and there's some equipment leases there too. Your net OPEB liability, this is your post-employment benefit, actuarially determined balance is $72 million there. The net pension obligation is $400 million. This is your fair share of the STRS and PERS unfunded pension liability at the state. So that's why when I talked about up above your deficit net position, your unrestricted was a negative $323 million. This $400 million is what's causing it. And you're not alone. Everybody has to share in that and their fair share of that obligation. So, and there's nothing you can do about it either. So there are some related items to that. So there's a deferred outflows when your actuarial study changes. There's deferred inflows. So if we net all those together, your net pension obligation plus those deferred items is a deficit impact on your net position of $326 million. So obviously your unrestricted would be positive if it wasn't for that. And again, it just is the district's fair share of the unfunded STRS and PERS pension obligation. So your general fund increased $13 million to $113.6. Your available reserves into just over 16%, which is outstanding. Good job by the fiscal team there. Your board policy adopted minimum is 3%, which is the state's minimum, but the board has usually every year, from what I can remember, kind of set a higher target for the fiscal team to shoot for. Nobody, including your auditors, want anybody near that state minimum of 3, because that really is a floor. At which point you get close to that or drop below that, the state is looking at you, the County Office of Education is looking at you, and your auditors are to determine if you're going to remain fiscally solvent. So we don't like the term state minimum of 3% because it's really not that. It's basically a minimum before we really start looking hard at how bad off things might be in the district. ADA has dropped a little bit over the last few years, but I heard in your earlier presentations you're working on that, which will definitely help your funding go up. This year, you're kind of held harmless, which is nice. So it would be great to increase things in 21, 22, assuming everything gets back to normal, which I'm ready for, to be honest with you. That's really all I did. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot because, like I said, we went through the report for about an hour with a few board members, and I think there might have been a union rep there. I'm not sure. But you remember those board members that have been around. We were VTD, Babernick, Trine Day and Company. We just want to remind people we merged in with I. Bailey. So you hear the name, but the people are all the same. We haven't let anybody go. Everybody's still with us that had our team going before. We're really happy with that. We have a really good team in our Fresno location, and if we're any other needs you need, the firm has really have a lot of expanded services. We just had a district client down south get all of their data locked up and had to pay to get it back. So you need anything looked at again, reach out to us. We've got a really good team. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But I wanted to try and keep it short just because we already spent the hour going through it in horrible, boring detail with a few of you. I don't remember because I wasn't live this time, so it's hard to remember a video face than a live face. But if you were there, you might share with the other ones if anything came up during that meeting. But I think it was pretty status quo. So everybody's doing a very good job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am looking for questions from the board. Trustee Brown?
Yes, I wouldn't be me if I didn't make mention of the reference to measures D and E and the fact that there are no findings whatsoever. That is great news, and I think it's something that somehow we need to share with the public. So if members of the public are watching, I want you to know that the district is utilizing your bond funds as planned and according to plan, and the audit shows that there's been no abuse of those funds. So if we can find a way to make that known to the public and let them know that we are good stewards of their money and we're accomplishing great things, I want to see that happen, because we will have to go out again for another bond to support programs and facilities at our high schools.
Thank
you, Mr. Brown. I completely forgot about the bond. I saw it on the agenda item there and skipped my mind. But yes, there were no findings in that report either.
Vice President Lopez and then Mr. Zierli.
Yeah, hi, Bill. Question for you. You're talking about the reserves at 3% is the floor. We're at 16, but in your expertise and what you've seen throughout all your work, what's ballpark we're looking at size-minded districts, and also what would you say is too much?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think anything's too much these days, okay. Right? I mean, we don't know what we're walking into here. When March first happened, everybody really thought the worst, and it came, which you're supposed to do, right? As a government, state did the same thing. You have to budget for the worst case scenario, and hopefully things come back better than what you anticipated, which I think they have, a little bit at least statewide. But I don't see districts typically up in 20%. I typically see districts between 10 and 15, unless they target. A lot of districts will target 3%, and they will commit a lot of fund balance. They will, I'm not saying hide money, but they will designate fund balances up outside of that 3% calculation on purpose to keep themselves at 3%. This district doesn't do that. Most of ours don't. It's good not to. It's full disclosure. The reserves are there. They're not, in my mind, they're not excessive. I think around 15% is what I typically would see at large districts. And I really don't think that there's anything really that excessive. I mean, I think the unions would realize if you're up at 25% or something like that, that there's something going on.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Zierli.
Yeah, I just want to add to the last two board comments. Trustee Brown mentioned the bond, and I didn't point this out, and we did share the bond audit with the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, which we're required to do prior to the board accepting it. So that was done last week. So the Oversight Committee is aware of what you mentioned, Trustee Brown. And Trustee Lopez, and I'm not sure if I shared this with Bill or not, but the board's action, we have a 6% reserve. So the 3% is the state required reserve for our district, our size. The board took action for a 6% minimum reserve for our district. So
Okay.
as well. So thank you.
Good. And that's your minimum. 6% goal is the minimum. Okay.
Trustee Marks. You're muted.
Thank you again. Sorry, I forget. Thank you for the report and for just making it understandable. And I appreciate, I was on the CSBA and we fought to get it above 3% a few years ago. The reserves are very frustrated with the governor at the time and the legislature. So because we carried California through education, actually we carried California through all the recession in 2007, 8, 9. They moved all our money around. But anyway,
Yeah.
I did have a question about the pensions though. On that, when I saw that slide, just how, so I know we're spending down our reserves, and I know in a few years it's going to be in a critical state, and then watching just the way things have been going. Though this year we thought things were going down, but now they've taken a nice uptick, which is going to help us. But how do we plan better for, as you look at it, and Mr. Zierle, to ensure that we're not going to end up in a really bad place with paying off these pensions and STRS and PERS, which are coming. They gave us a break this year, but I know they're coming to increase in the next few years. The governor's going to do that, but yeah, I don't know if there's any. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but your thoughts.
Yeah. It's up to the state boards for those two pensions on how they handle it. Everybody's hoping for better investment returns. They've already increased your employer and employee rates over the years to try and get those liabilities down, those pensions funded. Besides raising rates more for employers and employees, which is really tough, it's just something that the district has to continue to plan for. They set the rates out. Tim, how many, 3-4 years that you're pretty locked in for, at least to give you some warning on that for budgeting purposes. And, your employees are getting hit with it as well. And that's something for everybody to keep in mind, that not only is the district getting hit with a huge expense to fund this thing, along with everyone else in the state, right, that's participating in these. It's cities, counties, colleges, it's everybody that pays into this. That's how basically your fair share of that pension liability is calculated. It's your contribution, say, into STRS, compared to everyone else's, gives you a percentage each year, and then you share in that liability based on that. So it's pretty much out of your hands, besides making sure that you're budgeting for those increases and just looking way out into the future, knowing that they're going to continue to go up unless the investments turn around and those returns start coming in better than what they have in the past.
Yeah, because they've been pretty dismal for them in the past. Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. And I know we've done well planning, and I appreciate our staff working towards ensuring that we're able to still stay in a good place even during this, even though we don't know the future and where we're headed exactly. So I'm just watching those numbers. So thank you so much, Mr. Williams.
No problem.
Trustee Brown, did you have something else to add? No. Okay.
That was a hot potato moment right there.
You guys are tricking me tonight with the hands. Vice President Lopez, your hand is still up. Is that on purpose, or you're just playing? Okay, thank you. Ms. Noonan, do we have any comments from the public?
No, we do not on this item.
All right. Back to the board. Seeing no hands. I am looking for a motion to approve the district's 2019-2020 financial statements and auditor's report of all funds, including bond measures D and E. This is moved by Trustee Brown and seconded by Trustee Marks. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Our next item is items to be placed on future Board of Education agendas. Do we have any items that we wish to place on future agendas? Trustee Brown? You're mute.
I'd like to return back to our student report from Carson Carranza and see if we can't have a discussion in the board about his recommendation.
Concerning the grades?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I would support that. Trustee Irvin?
I was thinking we can have on the agenda update on the ROTC, junior ROTC.
Okay, thank you. And
so can I add something? So each time, my understanding, and Cindy, you can help with this, for each item that we add on to the agenda, and Cindy, you can help me with this. My understanding is you need to get 3 additional votes to be able to put that on. And the reason why I'm putting a pause here, and Cindy, I would like for you to explain what we've done in the past, is if you took a look at the year at a glance board agendas, it's packed. So if we want to add some things, that's absolutely great. This is your meeting. I'm just the secretary of this, but we will have to take some stuff off. So we just have to be very cognizant of what we're adding, because unless we want to be here till 10 or 11, which is fine, we can do that, but we just have to be cognizant of board at a glance and that yearly calendar. So my understanding that in the board protocols, if we add something, so let's go back to Trustee Irvin. He would like a report on JROTC. First question would be, can it be in a board communication? And if the answer is no, he'd rather have it out in the public, then is there 3 other board members that agree to that? If that's the case, then we add it on. That's the only, that will help me in planning. Otherwise, I'm real concerned with 4 hands sitting up, going up, because we only have so many meetings before the end of the year, and we have certain obligatory things that we have to do throughout the year. So Cindy, do you want to add anything to that?
So I do know that we used to have a paper that we would submit that would have a check mark on, and we'd check if we wanted it in discussion, if we wanted it in a just a closed session, or if we wanted it in a written document, so that we could say, I just want to have this information.
Right.
Could you send that out? So I know staff has done that with me when I've asked for some information. They put it in a written document, which helps me. And every once in a while, it's good to have, because some of it doesn't necessarily need a discussion, but some might need a discussion, like what Trustee Brown had. If we were going to discuss that, that would take some effort, you know, for staff to put together something, and then we would have to do it. But I do know that it is, I do recall we had a board member many years ago that submitted a whole bunch, and it pretty much overwhelmed the district with items and was very difficult to get actual other work done for us in that time, because there were so many reports and things asked for. Now, granted, I can see where board members would like to know some things or need some more information, and I think that's great. And so, but to find out, we did make a policy where we said, you know, so that someone couldn't submit 10 items on one night and say, you know, I want this. And then they also said, how soon do you want it? Do you want it at the next meeting, or do you want it in a few months? Could we fit it in where we can? And so that also helps staff, and you especially, know how to fit it in with the agenda. So, but.
And the other piece to that is, when I have one-on-ones, I ask folks what do they need information on. Tonight, that was specifically from 2 board members. So if we want to do it this way, then we can certainly do it at the boardroom, but then we won't do it also at the one-on-one, because the board meeting is your meeting, and I do respect that. It sounds like I'm pushing back, and I'm really not. I'm just trying to make sure with the new board we know a protocol to make this happen. But it's also our ability as a school district to tell our story. To tell the story, you need to tell it by chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. If we have it cut up, chapter 1, chapter 7, chapter 6, and chapter 2, you all are going to get confused, and the community's going to get confused. Now, I will go in whichever way you guys want to do that, but that's my 2 cents as your secretary.
So what I'd like to do is go back and revisit the 2 suggestions we already have, and then we can discuss everyone else's to see if this is something that we can put in a board communication, or can it be done with a one-on-one, or is it something that you still want to see presented in one of our future board meetings. So I'm going to go back to Trustee Irvin on the update of the junior ROTC. Is this something that can be done a different way, or what are you thinking?
I was thinking in a board presentation, because there's still a lot of people who don't know we have a junior ROTC program in our community. And I think it's time that, we at least give the community an update, say this is something we have now that we didn't have, and this is the first time we've had it in our district. Now we're not the only district in our county that doesn't have one, So.
Okay, so do we have 2 other board members who would also like to see a presentation on the junior ROTC?
I've got a question.
Excuse me?
I have a question regarding that.
Okay.
We have a presentation coming on the CTE programs. Can it be incorporated in that without a special board agenda item?
It could be.
Okay.
Would that be okay, Trustee Irvin?
Yeah, yes, that would be okay.
Awesome, thank you. Trustee Brown, the student report on the grading system. How are you feeling about that? Is that something that can be done a different way? Or do you need that to be a part of a board presentation?
It feels to me like that needs to come before the board for some kind of discussion so that we can, if it's possible to implement it before the school year's out, we can give...
So I see 2 things with this. I see this year in COVID, what can we do in a resolution to help and support our students? I would wait till deep in the spring. If you spring that on them now, you may have different behaviors for students if we do that. I think that timing is of the essence on that, and that actually is calendared for this year. What are we doing relative to grades? It's later, it's deeper in the spring. But I think the grading piece, which is what Carson is talking about long-term, looking at our grading practices, and I know that I've talked to Trustee Marks about this, and you all at CSBA, about what are we doing fundamentally around grading and equity. And that really is getting a committee of teachers and administrators and the union and crunching that out for 8-10 months, bringing it back to the board with some recommendations, because that's a seismic shift and we need to get buy-in. However, if we want to have a discussion on why don't we explore, these are kind of the things we're thinking about, and then task a committee to begin looking at that and then come back, next year. So I see two different things.
Yes.
I have a question on that. Yeah, I mean, that's why a hand was raised. It was about Trustee Brown's. It's not something new.
Okay.
If that's okay.
So Trustee Maestas, do you want to tag on to that one?
Yeah. That I don't have a new item. My question, my hand was up specifically for Trustee Brown's. I think what Carson was getting at though was for this semester right now about the 50% is the floor, not in a long term. Like I agree that we need to talk about the long term, but I think time is of the essence on this one to talk about, because if you wait too long, then those zeros that happen from now until the spring, those zeros all add up and you have kids that are further down the hole. And I think that's what he says, but I know his hand is up on that. I would agree with Trustee Brown on something like this being brought up sooner than later.
So the semester just ended, so we're talking about the new semester that's coming in. We can certainly bring that back. question and be very conscious of making a decision and not bringing teachers alongside of you. You certainly have the right to make that decision. But if you don't have 2,000 teachers behind you, there could be some unintended consequences. I'm not saying you don't do it. I'm just saying, is that what you want to do by setting a standard in isolation of the teachers? Or do we want to look at what we did relative to grading this last semester? And we had a group of teachers and instructional coaches come together. They provided strategies for grading, and you got a lot of input and feedback, and many teachers used that. So we can certainly bring this back at the next board meeting, but I would be cognizant of the need for bringing people along. That would be just my caution to you all.
I don't think we can demand teachers change the way they're grading. I agree with Dr. Noguchi. I think we need to, we're changing something that's been in place for a long, long time. I like the idea of doing the 50%. I think Carson had a great idea because I've seen kids who give up.
Now we have to be careful with this conversation because it's kind of a Brown Act violation.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
because
so right
we're moving
now,
into, yeah.
Okay, so I think that the subject then is this something we're going to bring up in a future board meeting as a presentation? Trustee Brown is saying yes. Trustee Maestas is saying yes. And we have Trustee Mejia that is saying yes. So it seems like that meets the criteria for bringing this up.
4. So if you've got 4 people saying yes, you want to bring it back together, then it moves forward.
So could you bring back what you just told us, Dr. Noguchi, in that what happened this last year with the teachers and the did you say counselors came together?
It was just last month.
I think that information would be extremely helpful for all of us to be able to have in that discussion.
First off, I just want to say that Trustee Urban had a question, and I don't know if Trustee Mejia was.
We haven't gotten to that yet. We'll get right to that. So we're going to go back to President West.
I just would like to finish this before we move on to the other hands. So we have three people that would like this brought forward. Do we have a fourth person?
Can I just mention something on this? I would like us to make sure that we do it in a strategic manner so that we don't make it impossible for it to work.
Exactly.
So I'm with Dr. Noguchi on a very careful plan, but I'd like our student board member to be involved with us as we make that plan.
So is the student, Carson, are you also, your hand was up a minute ago, I don't see you now. Is there a fourth person who would like this brought back?
Yes, sorry, I didn't know if you could see my hand when I was raising it.
I could, yes. So do we have 4 now? Does that constitute it,
yes.
Dr. Noguchi?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So we have one item that is recommended to come to a future board agenda. And now Trustee Mejia's hand just went down. So you're done? Or do you have any other?
Yeah. I wanted to jump in a little earlier on that, but I do think it's both. It's both and. It's not either or. I think we need to be strategic, but I also need to think long term and getting people involved. We talked about it, or at least I talked about it with Dr. Noguchi. But yeah, we need to do both and. It's not either or, but I do feel, at least in my conscience, that these students are the ones that are looking at the best interest of the students at this moment in time. A lot has been taken from them, and I think this may be like a small, little thing that we can do, but making sure we're strategic in communicating that those important stakeholders that eventually could come. But also, this is, if we make a decision, it should be based on this generation of students that are already facing a lot of challenges. So just thinking of them at this moment in time would be that kind of communicating that to the stakeholders and the teachers, knowing that it's not a permanent thing, it's just more a temporary too.
Thank you for that input. Trustee Irvin.
I was done. Mine is going to be on the CTE one, right? I think.
Okay. All right. I just saw your hand, so I didn't.
Oh, it's stuck up, huh?
Oh my goodness. All right. So we have one item that it's been agreed that we would like put on a future agenda, and that's it. It looks like. So now,
and Trustee Irvin's item incorporated into the CTE.
Into the CTE.
ROTC, yes.
And now, do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I move adjournment.
Trustee Marks, and is seconded by Trustee Mejia. And all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Good to
Bye.
see you all. Happy New Year again. Bye.
Hi.